Chapter 973. Just like this time, it was a very simple decision. Since the people of Tashaman didn't care about anything and kept this immortal body for tens of thousands of years or even longer, what was there for him to be afraid of? Overcautious and not decisive enough in doing things. These were some of the principles of Yang Chen's doing things in this life. It seemed that he was not without distractions, and his Tao heart was still flawed. If it weren't for Sun Qingshue's indifferent words, Yang Chen wouldn't have thought so much. Suddenly, Yang Chen was suddenly enlightened, and his heart seemed to suddenly become empty, and he couldn't say it was comfortable. There was nothing that could bind Yang Chen's heart. In a popular saying, at this moment, Yang Chen was indescribably enlightened. I have an epiphany, protect me. Yang Chen swallowed a second-grade, questioning inner heart pill directly without hesitation, and then sat down directly on the spot and began to cultivate the three purities secret art, and also began to comprehend what he had gained. The women didn't expect such a result, but there were not many opportunities for their husband to have this kind of epiphany. Everyone was careful not to disturb Yang Chen, and each found a direction. While cultivating, they guarded Yang Chen. In this cultivation, Yang Chen almost instantly comprehended the third layer of the three purities secret art. This was not a direct improvement with the help of the Dragon Yuan, but a real understanding of the mystery of the third layer of the three purities secret art. The hidden dangers caused by the forced promotion of the Dragon Yuan were corrected by Yang Chen one by one in this cultivation. The parts that he didn't understand before were now suddenly enlightened one by one, and a new world appeared in front of him in an instant. It turned out to be like this. Yang Chen's heart frequently made this kind of awakening sigh while cultivating. Not only the third layer, even the previous first and second layer. Now looking back, it seems that there are some unsatisfactory places. Just take this opportunity to solve them one by one. In the sea of consciousness, it began to churn wildly, and the originally solid sea of consciousness collapsed again. Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, which he was so proud of, suddenly had a scene of mountains collapsing and the earth cracking. Fortunately, Yang Chen still remembered that there was still Li Heng's spiritual consciousness imprint in his sea of consciousness. He deliberately threw the imprint into the dragon's head and then into the blood river. Within Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, the only things that remained unchanged were the blood river and the white dragon. Everything else was changing. After the complete collapse, the sea of consciousness began to rebuild, but this time it was based on Yang Chen's reperception of the three purities secret art. Even the tempering of the 9 thunder tribulations seemed to be incomparable to Yang Chen's own perception. After his sea of consciousness returned to its original appearance, Yang Chen only felt that there was no part of his body that did not have that kind of refreshing feeling. To be free and unfettered, this was the Taoist heart that a true cultivator should have. When Yang Chen cultivated in seclusion, the feelings of the 4 women around him became more and more surprised. At first, he sat there quietly, but slowly, Yang Chen's body slowly released an aura that could not be ignored, filling this secret plane. This aura was getting higher and higher, and finally reached a peak, and suddenly it was like a crash, disappearing without a trace. But immediately after, an aura that was even more solid than before began to rise from nothing until it reached the highest point. The 4 women around him only felt that this new aura was completely different from the previous one, even different from anyone they had ever seen. The kind of aura that came from the bottom of his heart and needed to be looked up at tightly entangled the minds of the 4 women, as if they were willing to follow this aura and rush to the peak without any regrets. Just when the 4 women were also driven by Yang Chen's spiritual awareness and immersed in a state of selflessness, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness finally began the ultimate change of the third layer of the three purities secret art, and the spiritual awareness began to split a little. Yang Chen never thought that the splitting of the spiritual awareness would be so painful. It was as if someone was holding a hacksaw and slowly sawing his head in half. If it weren't for the countless hardships that Yang Chen had experienced in his previous life, and his mind had long been as hard as steel, he might not be able to bear such pain and interrupt his cultivation. The more painful it was, the more persistent Yang Chun was. Yang Chun understood this truth. Fortunately, the first split of the spiritual awareness did not last too long. Only just 9980 hours, and the originally complete piece of the spiritual awareness began to be divided into two parts. What surprised Yang Chun was that the split spiritual awareness was only a small piece of his own spiritual awareness, which could almost be ignored. But in this small part of the spiritual awareness, it contained all the memories of Yang Chun so far. Besides that, there seemed to be nothing else. It was a wonderful feeling, as if one person suddenly became two. Beside him was the blank immortal body. Yang Chun, of course, did not hesitate to send his split spiritual awareness to the immortal body, and then quietly waited for the small piece of spiritual awareness to succeed. Yang Chun's main body could clearly perceive that the split spiritual awareness entered the immortal body, and then released the memory, occupying the other's mind. The series of processes was very mysterious. It was like watching a person grow from nothing. The small piece of spiritual awareness that occupied the immortal body, after the split consciousness completely controlled the immortal body, was directly transformed into the spiritual awareness of the immortal body, opened up a small group of sea of consciousness, and then stopped all movements. All these movements were clear in the mind of Yang Chun's main body, as if witnessed with his own eyes, and everything in the split body could not escape the observation of the main body. He originally thought that the immortal body would stand up immediately, but unexpectedly, after the possession, the consciousness of the split body seemed to have exhausted its energy and began to fall asleep. However, the current sleep was completely different from the previous sleep of the immortal body. In the past, it was just a skin bag without consciousness and feeling, but now it was Yang Chun's split body that was sleeping. At the end of this process, Yang Chun's mind suddenly had another realization. This was the clone consciousness of the three purities secret art split from his spiritual awareness for the first time. It was simply an insurance for his own body. When the consciousness of the main body died, the consciousness of the split body would awaken. The secret of the three purities secret art turned out to be here. With such an immortal body, even if Yang Chun's main body went to the Taishaman now, he would not have any scruples. Even if the main body died, Yang Chun would not die. This immortal body was another life for Yang Chun. With his solid backing, Yang Chun would no longer have any fear. Next, he only had to wait for Yang Chun to complete the quenching of the immortal beheading blade and kill in all four directions. However, the shadow of another person flashed in Yang Chun's mind. Taishang Lao Jun, the person who taught Yang Chun the three purities secret art. Now Yang Chun could completely conclude that Taishang Lao Jun was definitely not dead. Chapter 974. If Yang Chun's three purity secret art was the same as Taishang Lao Jun's three purity secret art, then Yang Chun could be completely sure that Taishang Lao Jun was definitely not dead. Even if he was beheaded by Yang Chun on the immortal beheading stage, that was only his main body. Once the main body died, the clone that was hidden somewhere would wake up immediately, replace the main body, and recultivate to become another great master. No one would know which Taishang Lao Jun's clone would be. Naturally, no one would know which Taishang Lao Jun would be in the future. At least in the memory of Yang Chun's previous life, there's been no memory of Taishang Lao Jun. Yang Chun was not afraid that Taishang Lao Jun would hide any conspiracy, which meant nothing to him. The high and mighty Taishang Lao Jun would not notice a small executioner. Even if he passed Yang Chun the three purity secret art at the time, he probably wouldn't have thought that Yang Chun could leave the immortal beheading stage, right? If it was Taishang Lao Jun, then many things could be explained. For example, the origin of this immortal body. In the entire heavenly court, it seemed that only Taishang Lao Jun had this ability to reach the three realms. Even the Jade Emperor couldn't. Not to mention, the immortal beheading stage was refined by Taishang Lao Jun. To be able to let mortals in the mortal world kill immortals in the immortal world, this method was really superb. In this way, it was really a piece of cake for Taishang Lao Jun to send a few immortal bodies to the mortal world. Maybe this one was sent by Taishang Lao Jun tens of thousands of years ago. After all, the three realms were different, and it was common for the predecessor of Teshumon to pick it up when it was lost. Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain the existence of such a big seven treasures glazed glass box and the immortal body. After figuring this out, Yang Chun seemed to have less doubts. In any case, this immortal body was already his clone. As long as it was preserved, once something happened to the main body, he could cultivate again. It was equivalent to having another life. This kind of great thing, he should be happy. Not just anyone could pick up what old Lord Taishang had missed out on. Perhaps Yang Chun had run into this kind of great luck this time. It was super heaven-defying. While Yang Chun was having fun with his wives, the Teshumon side was in chaos. It was because something had happened to the young sect master, Li Liheng. Of course, it wasn't a bad thing. It was a great thing. The young sect master directly turned his residence into dust again. Although they had lost some property, it was a great thing for the Teshumon. This meant that Li Liheng was getting closer and closer to Senior Lu Fengzi in the spiritual realm. Although Li Liheng fainted here, the overwhelming momentum that shocked the masters of the Deshang stage seemed to be getting more and more powerful. Senior Lu Fengzi's cultivation seemed to have increased again. When Li Liheng woke up, the sect master and several core elders questioned him, and he honestly told them about the changes that had occurred this time. It was still an earth-shaking change. Sometimes, Li Liheng couldn't even describe it in words. It could only be understood but not spoken, and the description was not thorough enough. Several core elders of the Deshang stage were so envious that their eyeballs almost fell out. This kind of scene that they didn't know whether it was a real scene or a spiritual awareness projection. If they let them see it, it would definitely have a great effect on their own cultivation base. That was the scene in the spiritual world. They were excited to think about it. However, the elders also had self-awareness. Without the spatial spiritual awareness cultivation method, they couldn't get anything. Now, that Li Liheng encountered this kind of thing again, it could only be said that it was Li Liheng's opportunity. In the future, they would have to vigorously please Li Liheng and ask him to help ask Senior Lu Fengzi if there was anything he needed to point out in their own cultivation. Didn't the sect master Li Tiancheng, who was mentioned by Senior Lu Fengzi, immediately found a solution? Although it was not easy to find people with full water attribute spiritual roots, at least there was a direction. It was much better than them blindly groping. Li Liheng, who had once again become a popular person, was keenly aware that his status in the sect seemed to have been vaguely improved. The original Grand Elders would often come over to ask about his well-being. Even some of the servants by his side would be fawned upon and taken care of by the Grand Elders. This feeling was simply too great. As the young master of the number one Taoist sect in the world and the future master, Li Liheng seemed to have already seen his glorious future. He saw himself holding great power and looking down on the world. His whole person seemed to be insufferably arrogant. Very naturally, even his words carried a bit of a commanding tone. Originally, Yang Lan still had a period of imprisonment, but under Yang Lan's careful service and pleasing, Li Liheng also promised Yang Lan to release Yang Lan as soon as possible. Li Liheng himself did not have any plans to succeed, but he secretly told this to the law enforcement hall master. The hall master did not say anything and directly handed the person over to Li Liheng. Li Liheng himself was a little surprised. When did the law enforcement hall master become so easy to talk to? Yang Lan, who was rescued, was almost crippled. A newly advanced Jedon, after staying in a place like the deep cold pool for so long, had almost been frozen into a popsicle. Even after coming out, it took a long time for him to recover slowly. This was still an early rescue. If he was brought out when the real sentence was completed, it was estimated that Yang Lan could only prepare for his funeral. Yang Lan also got the reason why his sentence was increased for no reason from Yang Lan's mouth. In the end, it was because of Yang Chun. Li Liheng now needed more spirit-congealing pills, and no one could refine them except Yang Chun. Yang Lan also came up with the idea to frame Yang Chun, so he would naturally be punished. After understanding the whole story, Yang Lan thanked Li Liheng on the surface, but in his heart, he hated Yang Chun again. Along with it, Li Liheng was also hated by him. Obviously, he had the ability to let him leave the deep cold pool earlier, but he insisted on waiting until now. If there was a chance, he didn't mind calculating with Li Hung. I don't know when, Yang Lan felt that everyone was sorry for him. Even Yang Chen's cultivation was faster than him. His cultivation was higher than him, and his realm was stronger than him. These were all sins. This distorted mentality made his hatred for Yang Chen grow stronger and stronger, and he wished that he could eat his flesh and sleep on his skin to dispel the hatred in his heart. As for Li Hung, he was a temporary backer of Yang Lan. When Yang Lan got what he wanted, he would kick him away. Do you really think that you are the young sect master, and everyone should be inferior to you? Chapter 975. Of course, Yang Chen didn't know that Yang Li's mentality had changed so much. He was now considering where to send this avatar to be absolutely safe, so that he could rest easy in the future. The choice of this place was indeed a headache. But soon Yang Chen was not so worried. The naughty son Qing Xue always gave Yang Chen some key hints. For example, this time, she inadvertently said, "As long as it is a place where others can't get in," it gave Yang Chen a reminder. Where others can't get in, is there a safer place than the Dragon Palace he went to last time in the South China Sea? That place was called the Sea of No Return. Countless Deshang stage sea beasts died there, not to mention human cultivators. It was simply the most suitable place. It was not only safe, but there was also an important benefit. In the sea, it could provide endless 10th water, true essence, and spirit power nourishment. Even if it took a long time, there was no need to worry. In this place, the 9th water true essence has been exhausted, because the Great Lake has dried up, and there will no longer be any 9th water true essence. Moreover, the spirit power in the surrounding thousands of miles has been almost sucked out by the silent spirit gathering array. In another 100 years, there may be no trace of spirit power here. However, the Sea of No Return was different. There were countless spiritual veins and the infinitely tight 10th water true essence, which just continued to nourish this immortal body. As for how this avatar would come out if an accident happened, Yang Chen didn't care. With his current experience, there were at least several ways to leave, and the avatar with all his memories would not be difficult. For the time being, there was a way to settle the avatar. Yang Chen was no longer worried. Next, it was natural to sum up the gains and losses, and then start to refine the sword embryo of the life source flying sword for Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. Of course, after this, he would help Master Gao Yu refine the dragon horn flying sword. However, before that, Yang Chen did not forget to let Li Hung consume a few more spirit congealing pills. Taishamen really think that he has refined enough spirit congealing pills, so they can hit him when he is down and sell his own compass to let people kill him and find trouble for him. Yang Chen wanted to see what kind of expression he would have when he saw Home Master Mao Qi again. Therefore, Li Hung, the young master of the Taishamen sect, was once again lucky enough to connect with Lu Fengzi, a senior in the spiritual realm. And Yang Chen's little trick made Li Hung exhausted, and he had to rely on the spirit congealing pill to barely establish this connection to maintain a longer time. The explanation he gave Li Hung was also very simple. His cultivation base had changed once more, and the gap between them had increased once more. As a result, this feeling of exhaustion was getting stronger and stronger. There were only two solutions. One was for Li Hung's cultivation to rapidly improve. The other was to take the spirit congealing pill. This time, the communication between the two lasted for about half an hour. And Li Hung also consulted them one by one about the problems encountered in their cultivation according to the wishes of several core elders. Yang Chen has already gotten the cultivation methods of the Taishamen from several places. Although it is incomplete, he still knows some of the famous cultivation methods. Coupled with his great principal golden immortal experience, he gave detailed answers to the questions of those people. Of course, Yang Chen will not explain the problem all at once, and left a little tail, enough to hang the appetite of these people. He didn't want to increase the strength of the top masters of the Taishamen again in a short period of time. However, after this toss and turn, Li Hung had used no less than 10 spirit congealing pills, more than twice as many as the last 4. In the end, Li Hung ended this cross-boundary communication in a coma. After waking up, Li Hung didn't dare to hide anything. He was a smart person and knew where his previous status came from. So he didn't wait for the elders to ask, and he took the initiative to talk about the process one by one in detail. The problems of the elders were the bottlenecks that had troubled them for many years. It was said that this kind of bottleneck would definitely appear after reaching a certain level of cultivation. There were only a few ways to solve it: either retreat and meditation, or go out to improve the state of mind and cultivation, or take some heavenly materials and earthly treasures and so on. But the elders of the Taishaman, especially those who had reached the position of the core elders, had great power, which was rare in the world. The satisfaction it brought was sometimes even more intoxicating than the improvement of cultivation. Let them give up all this to retreat and practice hard, or go out to gain experience. They might not be able to bear that kind of gap. Naturally, this bottleneck limited the improvement of their cultivation. And Yang Chen's explanation for each person's problem really made people feel bright. It was as if a guiding light suddenly appeared in the fog. It seemed that as long as they followed, they could see the broad road to transcending the tribulation and ascending. However, the people who were immersed in the surprise did not find that there was a direction, but how to break through the bottleneck in front of them immediately. There was no specific way. There were a few answers to small tricks that allowed them to solve a small part of the problem in a short time, but they could not fundamentally cross the bottleneck. Unfortunately, everyone was in ecstasy, and no one noticed this. This cross-boundary spiritual cultivation method was simply the best treasure given to the Taishaman by God. With this, why would the Taishaman worry about not being able to dominate the world? When they thought that if the Taishaman dominated the Tao sect, everyone's authority would be improved unprecedentedly. Several core elders were excited. Now, their own cultivation was expected to improve, and their power was expected to increase. What more could they ask for in life? The only problem was the spirit congealing pill. Last time, Yang Chun gave enough, but this time the consumption, plus the previous consumption, was obviously not enough. If it was in the past, everyone might still think of waiting until the last moment to find Yang Chun. But now, after 2 cross-boundary spiritual awareness connections, they have found that compared with the future of the Taishaman, Home Master Mao's face and some of the Taishaman's worldly possessions were not worth mentioning at all. In any case, they must find Yang Chun as soon as possible and let him refine enough spirit congealing pills. As for the price, at all costs. As for the compass that had flowed out before, most of it had been recovered, but some were still not recovered. As for the rest, they would kill all of them. Even if they couldn't kill those from the big sect, they would be strictly warned that if they dared to hit Yang Chun at will, they would be the next Huqiani. Yang Chun and the women did not know this. Even if Yang Chun knew, he planned to whet the appetite of the Taishaman. When the spirit congealing pills were consumed more, they would become more and more anxious. At that time, Yang Chun's extortion would be even louder. Who could have thought that Yang Chun accidentally left a spiritual awareness imprint, could make the spirit congealing pill become a fatal weakness of the Taishaman? Chapter 976. Yang Chun's 3 Purities Secret Art was truly and thoroughly entered the 4th level. The consequences of the split of the spiritual awareness. Yang Chun did not lose much spiritual awareness. Instead, because of the split, he no longer had to worry about it. So he gained more space for improvement. Strictly speaking, Yang Chun was forcibly promoted to the 4th level by the Dragon Yuan before, but it was not the real 4th level. It just reached that form, but it did not reach the spirit. Now, it was the real combination of form and spirit, with a strong spiritual awareness as the foundation. Whether it was refining the flying sword for Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, or working with Gao Yu to create the dragon horn flying sword, it had become much simpler. The scarlet snow spirit crystal was the top material of the metal attribute. It would take at least 100 years or more to complete the creation of the sword embryo with the general refining method. There was no way. The ordinary fire seed had no effect on this material at all. unless it was a specialized fire cultivator, and it needed at least a fire seed above the 5th grade to achieve the effect of smelting. If Sher Shanshan was allowed to create the sword embryo herself, she, who had the metal attribute spirit root, could only adopt a similar method to Gao Yu, using hundreds of years to scour it with spiritual power, and finally, when she could control it, she would carefully carve it. After this effort, it would take at least 200 years to complete the sword embryo. As for letting a master of refining help to create the sword embryo, it could certainly shorten the time by many years. However, without the means of Yang Chen's pet Xiao Tian that could devour the spirit, it would take a longer time to remove the traces left by the refiner in the sword embryo. The more advanced the material, the longer the time it would take. After all, the more powerful the refiner was, the more difficult it would be to remove the traces. This was common sense. But under Yang Chen's yin-yang heaven-burning fire, the scarlet snow spirit crystal was like butter, melting anytime and anywhere without the slightest difficulty. The dome hall was also thrown into the flame by Yang Chen without any regret and smelted together. As for the sword array of the 7x7 flying sword, Yang Chen did not use it directly. This would depend on Sher Shanshan's future thoughts. If she was willing, she could refine the sword array into her natal flying sword. Everything depended on what Sher Shanshan liked. After all, in her previous life, she was a plum fairy who traveled the world alone with a sword. There seemed to be no shadow of a sword array. In his memory, the shape of the flying sword that Yang Chun and Winter Plum Fairy used when they swept across the immortal world should be Sher Shanshan's favorite shape. Therefore, the flying sword's embryo was forged by Yang Chun according to that shape. A powerful flame coupled with an incomparably powerful divine sense, as well as an incomparably exquisite refining technique. This was considered one of the strongest metal attribute flying sword in the mortal world. Just the forging alone took Yang Chun a year's time. Fortunately, Yang Chun and the women were already at the nascent soul realm. Otherwise, it would take several times longer. Sure enough, as soon as the flying sword's embryo was formed, Sher Shanshan picked it up and couldn't put it down. After waving it a few times, she seemed to feel this smooth feeling. In the eyes of Sher Shanshan, Yang Chun must have put a lot of thought into her flying sword, and he must have paid a lot of attention to her on a daily basis. Otherwise, he would not have created a sword embryo that was so in line with her usage habits. It must be known that Yang Chun and Sher Shanshan had fought together a few times with tacit understanding, but only a few times. To be able to figure out Sher Shanshan's usage habits in this short period of time, it definitely required extraordinary care to be able to do it. At least Sher Shanshan asked herself. So far, she still didn't know Yang Chen's fighting habits. This discovery made Sher Shanshan's heart very sweet. Although she had always maintained a frosty face in front of the women, the moment she got the flying sword, she couldn't help but throw herself into Yang Chen's arms and enjoy the feeling of being cared for. Her own husband was so considerate for her. What could be more illustrative than this fact? Sher Shanshan was cold and elegant, but she did not reject being cared for by her own husband. The sword embryo had been built, and Sher Shanshan could take it to get used to it first, but she could not carry out the quenching of the life source magic weapon. After Xiao Tian swallowed the dragon bead, he was still digesting it, and it was estimated that it would take a while before he could come out. At that time, after Xiao Tian completely erased the aura of Yang Chun in the sword embryo, Sher Shanshan would then quench it, which was the most time-saving way. After completing Sher Shanshan's sword embryo, the next step was Sun Qingshue's. Relatively speaking, Sun Qingshue's would attribute heavenly thunder was also a top-notch material, but the difficulty of refining it was less than that of the scarlet snow spirit crystal. However, it was a bit too much to use flames to create the heavenly thunder wood. Yang Chun used a wood refining technique, and he also chose the flying sword style of Sun Qingshue's favorite later generations. Sun Qingshue's performance, when she got the flying sword, was many times more unrestrained than that of Sher Shanshan. When more than a year passed, Sun Qingxue took her flying sword embryo and immediately jumped into Yang Chen's arms with ecstasy. and offered her own hot kiss without scruples. "Thank you, husband." Sun Qingxue didn't know what to say to express her happiness. At this time, she understood why even Sister Shi, who was as cold as ice, could not help but throw herself into Yang Chen's arms after getting the sword embryo. The feeling of being cared for by her husband as a treasure was really wonderful. In 2 years, the two women's flying sword embryos were completed. Next, Yang Chen fully helped Gao Yu start to build the dragon horn flying sword. With a complete set of carving tools, the difficulty of refining the dragon horn flying sword was reduced. Gao Yu herself was a refining expert. When Yang Chen was refining the flood dragon bone flying sword, she witnessed the whole process of refining the flood dragon flying sword with her own eyes, which was of great help. Now, refining the dragon horn flying sword was already a matter of course. After hundreds of years of spiritual power, scouring, and spiritual awareness infiltration, the two dragon horns of water and fire were already completely the aura of Gao Yu, which made her more handy when controlling them. Yang Chen had confirmed the refining steps with her many times, and Gao Yu was also familiar with them. Under the encouragement of Yang Chen and the other 3 women, Gao Yu finally began to work on the 2 dragon horns. First, she used tools to carve, and after the fine shape, she used spiritual power to refine it. Gao Yu, who was already in the yuanying stage, controlled the whole refining process. It was not difficult. However, the time Gao Yu spent was still far more than Yang Chen. It took a full 10 years for the 2 flying sword to complete the sword embryo stage. Next, Gao Yu needed to spend another 100 years or so to quench the 2 dragon horn flying sword into her flying sword. At this point, the purpose of Yang Chen's family coming to the secret plane was achieved, and it was finally time to leave. Chapter 977. In the 5th thought of creating the sword embryo, Xiao Tian woke up. It has completely swallowed the dragon bead, and its body has grown a lot bigger again. It is dozens of feet long. However, when Yang Chen needs to use it, Xiao Tian will always only be the most suitable size for Yang Chen's hand, and it will always be the hilt of the flying sword. The flying sword embryos of Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue were swallowed by Xiao Tian, completely eliminating all traces left by Yang Chen. The 2 women happily held the formed sword embryos, saving hundreds of years of time, and began to quench their life source magic weapons. Gao Yu's dragon horn flying sword was originally made by herself, so there was no such problem at all. Basically, as long as it is tempered for a period of time, the 2 flying swords can really become Gao Yu's life source flying sword. The life source magic weapons of a family of 5. Except for Yang Chen's that has not yet been completely collected, the others have already been settled. This tortoise shell, who wants it? Before leaving, Yang Chen looked at the huge tortoise shell that constitutes the secret plane and suddenly asked. Yang Chen's tortoise shell statement made all the women disagree in unison. Yang Chen had no choice but to change his tone. Who wants this super defensive and offensive magic weapon? The huge tortoise shell has been refined into a secret plane, but this secret plane has been nourished by tens of thousands of years of spiritual power and has become unreasonably tough. As Yang Chen said, this is a super defensive magic weapon, because the sword array at the entrance is also an offensive magic weapon, which is similar to Yang Chen's dome hall. Although everyone doesn't like the name tortoise shell, no one will ignore such a protective magic weapon. In the end, the secret plane still belonged to the youngest and most naughty Sun Qingxue. However, Sun Qingxue still pouted and refused to let anyone call it tortoiseshell. After thinking for a long time, she finally came up with a name that she was satisfied with, Xuanwu Shield. Furthermore, he strictly instructed Yang Chen and the other 3 girls not to call it a tortoiseshell anymore. From now on, they would call it the Xuanwu Shield. Everyone doted on Sun Qingxue, the youngest sister. No one had any intention of disobeying her, so they all agreed with a smile. Then Sun Qingxue began to collect the secret plane with the help of Yang Chen. For any fortress, it was the easiest to attack from the inside, and it was the same to collect the secret area. After cutting off the spiritual power supply of the secret plane, it was basically taking whatever they wanted. Even so, Sun Qingxue still spent almost 2 months to completely collect the Xuanwu shield. After a simple refining, it became a protective magic weapon that could wrap the whole body after being released. And under the firm request of Sun Qingxue, Yang Chen also slightly modified the appearance of the Xuanwu shield. It was no longer a tortoise shell, but a very sleek, translucent egg shape, which finally satisfied Sun Qingxue for the time being. Leaving the secret plane still required Yang Chen to send it out with the secret technique. Just when Yang Chen made the penultimate secret technique and was about to complete all the secret techniques, suddenly his mind moved and Sun Qingxue opened the newly acquired Xuanwu shield. Sun Qingxue didn't know why, but she still did it. With the last secret technique of Yang Chen, everyone suddenly appeared in the canyon where they first came in. However, at this time, the canyon was not as calm as before, but full of killing intent. As soon as everyone's figure appeared, they were surrounded by a barrage of attacks. Fortunately, Sun Qingxue had already opened the Xuanwu shield and enveloped everyone in it. All these attacks fell on the Xuanwu shield and did not cause any harm. Obviously, this was an attack from the array. Ooh! Shi Shanshan's eyes flashed, and a cold, murderous aura broke out. Yang Chen saw Shi Shanshan's eyes for the first time after he married Shi Shanshan. After a long time of cooperation in the secret plane array, the women had quite a tacit understanding. They summoned the flying sword magic weapon and then divided into 4 directions, staring at the surroundings. As for Yang Chen, the women didn't have to worry about him. He reminded Sun Qingxue to open the Xuanwu shield. It was obvious that he had already discovered the abnormality. Moreover, with the perverted golden bell, there was no need to worry about the safety of Yang Chen. After being plotted against once, you have become careful. A strange woman's voice came from outside, with a teasing tone, and came into everyone's ears. Marshal Anguan? How come it's you? Unexpectedly, the one who spoke turned out to be Shi Shanshan. Listening to her tone, it seemed that the other party was actually a disciple of the Green Jade Immortal Island. Why can't it be me? The middle-aged woman called Marshal Anguan finally appeared far away in front of the crowd. Beside the woman, there was also an old woman who looked very old, holding a crutch and trembling. You actually brought Yagupa out? Shi Shanshan was shocked again. Marshal Anguan, are you not afraid of being punished by the sect rules? When Shi Shanshan and the other party were talking, Yang Chen and the other 3 women did not interrupt. It sounds like this is an internal matter of the Green Jade Immortal Island sect. At least let Shi Shanshan and the other party speak clearly. As long as you don't say it, who will know? Marshal Anguan sneered. Looking at the slightly glowing black tortoise shield, she couldn't help but sneer again. It seems that you really have a lot of tortoise shells, but do you really think this can block the killer of Yagupa? Marshal Anguan, are you crazy? Shi Shanshan shouted again, with a fierce shock, as if she wanted to wake up this Marshal Anguan. I'm crazy? Marshal Anguan laughed wildly. Do you really think I'm crazy? Why? Shi Shanshan no longer said much and asked directly. Her face had returned to that frosty appearance again. Why? Ha ha ha. Marshal Anguan laughed wildly again. Why? When I was in the Green Jade Immortal Island, my cultivation aptitude was the best, and almost all the resources were used by me. The sect almost regarded me as the hope of revitalizing the sect. But you actually appeared, you little girl, when you were still an outer sect disciple. You made everyone look at you with admiration and take care of you frequently. Those are what should belong to me. Why did you take away everything that I should get? Speaking of this, Marshal Anguan almost roared, and her originally beautiful face also looked a little hideous. Why didn't Huchini kill you? Why did he leave you alive? But today, I will take back everything that belongs to me with my own hands, and even rob what should belong to you. Everyone stared closely at the roaring Marshal Anguan. Obviously, this narrow-minded master couldn't even accept that others' aptitude was better than hers. This kind of person, even if her cultivation was high, her realm would not be good. No wonder she was still trapped in the late Yuanying stage and couldn't cross her tribulation. This temperament determined everything. Chapter 978. Gao Yu, Gong Sunling, and Sun Qingxue were all looking at the Ant Guan, but the attention of Shi Shanshan and Yang Chun was always focused on the old ant who seemed to be trembling and would fall at the next step. This old lady was definitely a master, and she was still a master of the Deshang stage. Her aura was restrained very well, and there was almost no leakage at all, at least in the eyes of Gao Yu, Gong Sunling, and Sun Qingxue. She was an old lady who might need others to take care of her. Shi Shanshan, on the other hand, clearly knew the horror of Yagupa. This was a hidden Deshang stage master in the sect. The reason why she was hidden was that she was actually possessed during cultivation, which made her brain not very clear and she couldn't speak. Ant Guan's name was Guan Jinyao. When Yagupa was normal, she took care of her in many ways and loved her very much. So after Yagupa's accident, Guan Jinyao took the initiative to take care of Yagupa. Although they were not close relatives, they were grateful and reciprocated. This was even a good talk within the Green Jade Immortal Island. Because Yagupa's cultivation deviation burned her brain, she was more focused on cultivation than others. There was nothing else in her eyes except cultivation. Although she may not be able to continue to improve in the big realm, the strength accumulated in the Deshang stage was quite considerable. There were very few people in the Green Jade Immortal Island who knew this, and even at the beginning, basically no one knew except Guan Jinyao. Later, the sect master and several elders discovered this fact by chance, and Shi Shanshan, as a beloved disciple of the sect, naturally knew some news. Knowing was knowing, but Shi Shanshan only knew that Yagupa had the strength of the Deshang stage. As for how powerful she was, she had never seen it and didn't know. But Yang Chun was different. His combat experience and his spiritual awareness had clearly told him how terrifying Yagupa was not far away in front of him. When there was only cultivation and only fighting left in the mind, and even fear was not known, the combat power that erupted was definitely not what ordinary people could imagine. Otherwise, why would people say that some crazy people were madmen? It was because of the horror of madmen. This dumb ant was undoubtedly classified as this kind of master. Now, it seemed that Shi Shanshan's martial Uncle Guan had used some unknown method to control this terrifying expert. That was why he had the confidence to make a move here. Not only that, but Guan Jinyao had probably bought a compass from Li Heng that could track Yang Chun. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to pinpoint Yang Chen's location so accurately and block Yang Chen's family. Yang Chen also knew that Li Heng's spiritual awareness imprint could expose his whereabouts, but this was a double-edged sword. Obviously, it was more important to help the Taishaman than to reveal his whereabouts. Perhaps the day when the Taishaman were completely destroyed would be the day when he would completely erase Li Heng's spiritual consciousness imprint. Guan Jinyao not only tracked the last position of Yang Chen's disappearance, but also waited here for an unknown amount of time and arranged an attack and siege formation to ensure that Yang Chen's family could not escape. If the strength of the dumb ant was added, Yang Chen's family of 5 would obviously be eaten to death. Of course, this was Guan Jinyao's idea, at least her current idea. Although Yang Chun and the others used an egg-shaped protective magic weapon to protect several people, there was no way to escape the siege of the formation she had carefully arranged. Now, she could state her conditions first. Yang Chun, if you want the lives of your family of 5, take out what Hu Qinny wants from you. After Guan Jinyao yelled at Shi Shanshan, she turned to Yang Chun. It had to be said that there were many smart people in this world. Yang Chun just threw out a pill recipe of the questioning inner heart pill, and it would never make everyone think that this was what Hu Qinny was pursuing. Of course, the pill recipe of the questioning inner heart pill was important enough and enough to explain Hu Qinny's motives to some people. However, when Yang Chun sold the pill recipe, the Taishaman did not make a move this time. What does this mean? Either the Taishaman had already obtained the pill recipe, or Yang Chun and the Taishaman had an agreement. Either way, it should not be a reason for Hu Qinny to make a move. So naturally, Yang Chun had something else to make Hu Qinny tempted, even to the extent of attacking Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. Guan Jinyao felt that this was a good opportunity. If it was really the key to Yang Chen becoming a fifth-grade alchemist master, then with her own attainments in alchemy, it should not be impossible to replace Yang Chen as a fifth-grade alchemist master after getting the thing. So, the smart Guan Jinyao chose a way that she thought was appropriate. On the one hand, to suppress and retaliate against Shi Shanshan. On the other hand, it was to get something from Yang Chen's hands, a two-pronged approach. With Yagupa there, everything was not a problem, not to mention the siege of the formation that she had carefully prepared for decades. Today, even if Yang Chen's family had wings, they could not fly out of Guan Jinyao's Wuji Mountain. Do you think I will give it to you in this situation? Yang Chen was not as angry as Shi Shanshan. He was not a disciple of the Green Jade Immortal Island, and he didn't have to think too much about the Green Jade Immortal Island. Either you give it to me yourself, or I get it from your body. You choose one. Guan Jinyao was really full of confidence, and the tone of her speech was as if she was in charge of everything and could not be refused. Guan Jinyao couldn't help but be proud. The power of Igupa. Except for her, no one else knew it all. If she didn't know this, how could she, a proud daughter of heaven, go back to take care of an old woman who was already crazy? She saw with her own eyes that Yagupa fought against two masters in the middle Deshang stage of the sect alone without falling behind, and even injured the two masters. The sect didn't know the power of Yagupa until the two masters recovered from their injuries, and before that, Guan Jinyao had fully gained the trust of the sect to take care of Yagupa. Shanshan, I'm sorry. Yang Chen did not answer Guan Jinyao's question, but gave a regretful sentence to Shi Shanshan. At the same time, his eyes did not leave Yagupa, who had not moved behind Guan Jinyao. Of course, Shi Shanshan also noticed Yang Chen's gaze, and even understood Yang Chen's meaning. The reason why he said sorry to her was obviously that he intended to ruin this peerless master of the Green Jade Immortal Island. Subconsciously, Shi Shanshan said to Yang Chen, "Don't." Although Yagupa was crazy, she was also a fighting force of the Green Jade Immortal Island. It was a pity that she was ruined by Guan Jinyao. It's too late to beg for mercy now. Guan Jinyao's face finally showed a smug smile. She had even heard the meaning of compromise from Yang Chen's words. Chapter 979. It's not too late, it's just a small Taishu Yin and Yang Nine Heavens formation. Yang Chen said the name of the formation that trapped everyone. How do you know? Guan Jinyao's face was stunned, and then she showed an incredible expression. What are you going to do? In the hands of Yang Chen, it was not known when a khaki flying sword had appeared. It was the life source magic weapon that had never been used from the hands of the Taishaman Elder Ming Guangruo, the flying sword. This living soil flying sword contained a trace of living soil qi. As long as it was used for a long time, this living soil would slowly swallow the surrounding materials and gradually increase itself. Although it would take thousands of years, or even longer for this trace of living soil qi to double, this did not hinder the strength of the flying sword. Especially when this flying sword was still in the mouth of Xiao Tian, it was even more so. Yang Chen grabbed Xiao Tian and slashed in the direction of several formation eyes that he knew. If it was an ordinary flying sword, this kind of chopping action would not have any effect. But now it was different. The living soil flying sword was held in the mouth of Xiao Tian, which was a completely different effect. With a few sword lights visible to the naked eye, separated from the blade of the flying sword, and flew to the position that Yang Chen wanted to cut. Boom! There were a few consecutive sounds, and the place that was hit by the sword light began to explode. How is this possible? Guan Jinyao had prepared for this day for a long time. She was good at alchemy and even studied the formation of the Taishu Yin and Yang Nine Heavens formation. When she personally experimented, not to mention the sword light, even if she personally urged the flying sword to stand in the formation and attack the position of the formation eye, it was impossible. Now Yang Chen actually achieved something that she couldn't imagine with a few sword lights. How could she not exclaim? Although she was surprised, Guan Jinyao was also a master of the late Yuanying stage. She didn't dare to say that her combat experience was very rich, but she also knew that now was not the time to be surprised. When the formation eye of the Taishu Yin and Yang Nine Heavens formation began to explode, Guan Jinyao said very softly to Yagupa, behind her, Gupa, they are bad people, kill them. The old lady, who had been standing there trembling, suddenly raised her head. Suddenly, her eyes flashed. Her originally stooped and thin body suddenly began to swell crazily like an inflated balloon. In the blink of an eye, she had transformed from a skinny old lady into a muscular woman. The long crutch that was half taller than her had become a stick at this time. The old lady didn't even make a sound. She swung the crutch high and smashed it down on Yang Chun, who had already rushed to the front. Yagupa had almost forgotten many of her previous attacks because of cultivation deviation. The only thing she didn't forget was to pick up the dragon head walking stick that she had refined into her life magic weapon to hit people. This most direct and crisp attack method was the most comfortable method that Yagupa felt. The formation now was blown up by Yang Chun, and the formation naturally began to lose its effect slowly. Yang Chen's figure naturally had no obstacles anymore, and he rushed directly to the front. Boom! At the moment when the dragon head walking stick collided with the live soil flying sword, the surrounding canyon seemed to explode as if a small nuclear bomb had been detonated, and the whole canyon burst open. Countless flying stones and dust shrouded everyone's figure in it, and no trace of them could be seen anymore. Humph! Overestimating yourself, a little yuanying stage cultivator dares to show his teeth to Aunt Gupa. Although she couldn't see what happened, and her spiritual awareness couldn't detect the situation around Yagupa, Guan Jinyao still laughed happily. But soon she remembered something and suddenly exclaimed, "Aunt, be careful. Don't break his chinquin bag." Obviously, Guan Jinyao was afraid that after Yagupa broke Yang Chen's chinquin bag, her arrangements would fail. She had seen the power of Yagupa's move with her own eyes. Two masters of the Deshang stage couldn't take it. Yang Chun was just a novice in the yuanying stage. This time, maybe he had already turned into meat paste. Buzz, a low bell sounded, and Guan Jinyao suddenly felt a shock in her mind, and she felt dizzy. The smoke and dust in front of her suddenly dissipated, revealing the figures of Yagupa and Yang Chun. How is this possible? Even in a dizzy state, seeing the scene in front of her, Guan Jinyao couldn't help but exclaim. On Yang Chen's body, it was not known when a golden bell appeared, and his figure was completely shrouded in it. Yagupa's dragon head crutch hit the bell in front of Yang Chun, motionless. On the surface of the golden bell, there were two illusory dragon shadows moving up and down, constantly flying. This scene was completely different from Guan Jinyao's imagination of Yang Chun turning into a pile of meat paste, and Guan Jinyao couldn't help but exclaim. Yagupa didn't know how to hold back. This crutch must have been smashed down with all her strength, but it didn't kill Yang Chun. It seemed that even Yang Chen's protective magic weapon was not broken. What kind of magic weapon could block the full blow of Yagupa in the Deshang stage? Guan Jinyao's brain was already a little dizzy, and she couldn't accept this fact at all. But what shocked her even more was still behind. After Yang Chen's golden bell, it was his living soil flying sword. At this moment, the blade of the flying sword was cutting into the dragon head crutch of Yagupa, and it had already cut in by almost half an inch. Not only that, as the two people increased their strength, the blade seemed to cut deeper, and after a while, it might directly cut off the crutch. This was Yagupa's life source magic weapon. It was unknown how many battles she had experienced, and it had never been damaged. Now it was destroyed like this. Even if Yagupa's brain wasn't working well, the pain on her face was not concealed. Even if she didn't know pain, the damage of her life source magic weapon was closely related to her mind, and it was extremely painful at this time. Before Guan Jinyao could react, Yang Chun and Yagupa each had an empty hand and had already blasted towards each other. With two loud bangs, the fists of the two hit each other's bodies at the same time. This time, even Yang Chen's golden bell didn't block Yagupa's fist. Yang Chen's figure flew back dozens of steps, and fell directly into the arms of Gao Yu, who was following behind him. Even Gao Yu couldn't help but step back a few steps before the force disappeared. Looking at this scene, Guan Jinyao's face showed a smile again. Yagupa's fist was no worse than a magic weapon, and even a body protection magic weapon might not be able to block it. At this point, the uselessness of Yang Chen's golden bell had already explained the problem. But Guan Jinyao's smile only appeared for a moment, and immediately turned into a shocked expression. Chapter 980. Yagupa, who was almost invincible in Guan Jinyao's mind, was no better than Yang Chen. Her swollen body kept retreating, and while retreating, she spurted blood from her mouth. After retreating a dozen steps in a row, Yagupa's legs and feet could no longer keep up with the retreating momentum brought by Yang Chen's punch, and she immediately fell to the ground. But her body didn't stop. Because Yagupa fell to the ground, she still maintained the inertia and slid quickly toward the back. It continued to slide on the ground for several feet before coming to a stop. The ground where Yagupa slid left a series of bloodstains. The red traces continued all the way for several feet, which was shocking to see. How is this possible? The first thought that appeared in Guan Jinyao's mind was impossible. How could such a thing happen? Yagupa was a master of the Deshang stage, and Yang Chen was just a junior in the early Yuanying stage. How could such an effect appear when the two of them punched each other? Although Yang Chen was also sent flying, he didn't look injured at all, and even flying back seemed to be a way to unload the force. But the Deshang stage master Yagupa, who had punched Yang Chen, who once repelled two Deshang stage masters with a stick, was punched by Yang Chen until she vomited blood. Not only that, after Yagupa fell to the ground, it seemed that there was no other movement except vomiting blood. Until now, she was still lying in the same place without moving, and she had fainted. Guan Jinyao's head exploded, and her whole body became dizzy. She was already frightened by the scene in front of her. The array that she carefully arranged was destroyed by Yang Chen's sword in the air, and even Yagupa, who she relied on as her last resort, was punched to death. How could this be? Guan Jinyao was dizzy here, but it didn't mean that Shi Shanshan and others would also be dizzy. This woman actually wanted to kill Shi Shanshan because her qualifications were better than hers. Today, she wanted to keep everyone here. How could the women let her go? When Guan Jinyao woke up from that shock, she immediately found that she had fallen into the encirclement of 4 women. Yang Chen, on the other hand, had already walked to Yagupa's side and was looking down at Yagupa's situation. Seeing this, Guan Jinyao calmed down. She was in the late Yuanying stage, but all the women were in the early Yuanying stage. As long as it was not Yang Chen who could stun a Deshang stage master with a terrifying punch, she didn't put the 4 early Yuanying stage masters in her eyes. Even if he couldn't kill the 4 women quickly, it wouldn't be a problem for him to escape alone. Do you think I'll be afraid when it's 4 against 1? Guan Jinyao was now sure that Yang Chen had no intention of interfering. He had already sat down on the side of Yagupa and stuffed an unknown medicinal pill to Yagupa. If Yang Chen were to make a move, Guan Jinyao would not dare to be so careless. Shi Shanshan slightly shook her head at the other 3 women. The 3 women silently moved away a little, but they still formed a small circle around Guan Jinyao. 4 against 1? You really think highly of yourself. Facing Guan Jinyao, Shi Shanshan shook her head very contemptuously. The tone of her speech was exactly the same as when Yang Chen solved her inner demons for her. Facing Guan Jinyao, who was in the late Yuanying stage alone, Shi Shanshan was not afraid at all. Instead, there was a sense of excitement from the bottom of her heart. This feeling was like the impulse of eagerness to try when she was really going to face a touchstone after carefully preparing for a long time. Yes, in Shi Shanshan's mind, the timing of Guan Jinyao's appearance was really just right. Shi Shanshan had just restored her cultivation base and was promoted to the Yuanying stage not long ago, and then honed in the formation of the secret plane for almost a whole year. Then she accompanied Yang Chen for double cultivation and listened to Yang Chen's analysis of her shortcomings in combat and the defects in her state of mind, adjusting and consolidating her cultivation base for almost 10 years. During these 10 years, although there was a delay in tempering her life source magic weapon, most of the time, for Shi Shanshan, was the best time for cultivation. Even in the Green Jade Immortal Island, under the guidance of her master and a group of predecessors, it seemed that the effect of cultivating next to Yang Chun was not as good. There was no way around it. In the history of the Green Jade Immortal Island, the only few people with the innate spirit root full value had already ascended, and they were not of the metal attribute. The guidance of the elders was nothing more than teaching Shi Shanshan their cultivation experience. But this was not necessarily completely suitable for her. Many things, for people with insufficient qualifications, it was much more difficult to cultivate, and they could only achieve it after thousands of twists and turns. But for people with good qualifications, it was likely to be a natural and easy thing. Sometimes, a simple thing was extremely difficult, and it gave Shi Shanshan a crooked path in vain, and she had to spend more time to recover. But with Yang Chun, there was no such problem at all. In the heavenly court, Yang Chun didn't know how many talented geniuses he had seen. Their past experiences were simply a broad road for Shi Shanshan. What's more, many of the directions were directly explained by Yang Chun according to the later achievements of Shi Shanshan in his previous life, saving Shi Shanshan, who didn't know how many twists and turns. Under the guidance of Yang Chun, Shi Shanshan was simply reborn. At this time, she realized how many detours she had taken in her previous cultivation. Naturally, Yang Chun's performance also made Shi Shanshan completely convinced. The aloof and incomparable fairy, in front of her own evildoer husband, completely lowered her arrogant head. Even under the bed, Yang Chun also enjoyed a different taste that Yang Chun himself couldn't imagine. Now Shi Shanshan, who had reached the extreme of this stage of cultivation, was feeling itchy, and Guan Jinyao was immediately sent to her. Was there anything more wonderful than this? For the one-on-one duel between Shi Shanshan and Guan Jinyao, the other three women didn't dare to be careless, for fear that Shi Shanshan would suffer a big loss. Although everyone would sometimes intentionally or unintentionally divide into two small groups in front of Yang Chun to compete for favor with each other, they were the same in the outside world. While staring closely at Shi Shanshan and Guan Jinyao, they also paid attention to Yang Chun's intentions. Yang Chun seemed to have nothing happened, and he was taking care of Yagupa with ease. This Guan Jinyao was a bastard, but Yagupa, who was indirectly controlled by Guan Jinyao, was innocent. Fortunately, Yang Chun's punch didn't use his full strength. Otherwise, with his realm of the second layer of river-turning strength, he could beat Yagupa into meat paste with one punch. Shi Shanshan not only had the spiritual awareness of the Dashang stage, but she also cultivated the seventh metal true secret art and dual cultivated with Yang Chun. Yin and Yang were in harmony. Even if Guan Jinyao was twice as powerful without entering the Dashang stage, it would be impossible for her to deal with Shi Shanshan. Chapter 981. The result of the battle was as Yang Chun expected. Even if Guan Jinyao's cultivation base was already at the peak of the Yuanying stage, even if she already had the life-flying sword, it was still not enough in front of Shi Shanshan. Shi Shanshan's combat effectiveness was fully reflected in this battle. The unprecedented strength also shocked Shi Shanshan herself. The more proficient she was in the battle, the more Shi Shanshan admired her husband's guidance. If it weren't for this, Shi Shanshan would only be able to escape when she met Guan Jinyao at this time. She might be able to save her life, but she was definitely not her opponent. The battle lasted for a long time. At least Yang Chun had taken care of Yagupa to take the medicine. He sat there and put out a tea set to make a pot of good tea. After drinking it with the other three women, the battle was over. Guan Jinyao's whole body was soft as she was carried by Shi Shanshan and came to everyone. At this moment, Guan Jinyao no longer had the arrogant posture she had before. She was carried in Shi Shanshan's hand, and her face was ashen like a fool. After she used all her means, she was broken by Shi Shanshan one by one, and then she went straight into the palace and captured her. During this period, Shi Shanshan showed extraordinary combat effectiveness, so that Guan Jinyao had completely lost the confidence to compete with Shi Shanshan. She is a disciple of my sect. I want to keep her life. Shi Shanshan faced Yang Chun and the women, but she had a rare, soft expression with a little pleading and no longer had the performance of a cold fairy. Guan Jinyao wanted to kill everyone, and everyone naturally wouldn't let her go easily. But it seemed unreasonable to just let her go, so Shi Shanshan would plead with everyone like this. Especially Yang Chun. Shi Shanshan's eyes were always looking at Yang Chun. Although Yang Chun didn't seem to be that bloodthirsty in the past, after living with Yang Chun for decades, she had a better understanding of Yang Chun's character. Especially in recent years, although Yang Chun had not killed a single person, the surging killing intent in his heart could not be hidden from her, the person who slept with him. Aling, something good has come on my door again. Yang Chun just smiled faintly at Shi Shanshan's earnest request and gave Shi Shanshan an answer, which could be considered as a promise to Shi Shanshan. Shi Shanshan was overjoyed. The tenderness in her eyes almost made Yang Chun lose himself. In his previous life, who would have dared to imagine that the cold plum fairy would reveal such an expression towards someone? Guan Jinyao didn't die, but she wasn't much better off. Although she could cultivate freely in the Mountain River geographical map, she was trapped in someone else's world for life, and she could never escape. This result made the women satisfied, and it also saved Shi Shanshan from carrying the charge of killing her fellow disciples, although it was Guan Jinyao who came to her first. The battle just now was very good. After dealing with Guan Jinyao, Yang Chun reached out and handed Shi Shanshan a cup of fragrant tea. This is just brewed, and the heat is just right. Is there anything more wonderful than receiving a cup of her favorite tea from her husband after winning a battle with all her strength? At least Shi Shanshan hadn't encountered it before. After enjoying the small cup of tea full of 7th metal true essence, Shi Shanshan suddenly felt relaxed and unspeakably comfortable. Is Yagupa okay? Shi Shanshan asked about Yagupa after enjoying it. She knew that her husband also considered that he still had to gain a foothold in the sect, so he didn't kill Yagupa. As for why Shi Shanshan had no doubt that Yang Chun could kill Yagupa in the Dashang stage. This was purely the tacit understanding between husband and wife. Needless to say, Shi Shanshan also had this confidence. She can still be saved. Yang Chun directly gave Shi Shanshan a reassuring answer. The injury of her previous cultivation deviation may also be cured. Really? Shi Shanshan couldn't believe her ears. Yagupa's injury has been seen by many masters in the sect, and even some masters from other sect were found to diagnose. Almost everyone agreed that there was basically no hope of recovery. Yang Chun actually said that she could still recover. How could Shi Shanshan not be overjoyed? Before Yagupa was mute and didn't have a cultivation deviation, she was definitely a master with a promising future in the Green Jade Immortal Island. Even except for those great elders, no one in the Green Jade Immortal Island could be compared with Yagupa. Her combat power was unparalleled. If it weren't for her cultivation deviation, maybe there would be another great elder in the Green Jade Immortal Island now. But now Yagupa could only be reduced to a situation where she had almost no consciousness of her own and was controlled like a puppet by Guan Jinyao. The dignified Dashang stage master was so reduced that countless people sighed. Yang Chen's words, in the ears of Shi Shanshan, were better than any sweet words. These days with Yang Chun, Shi Shanshan has thoroughly understood that the sect would hardly be able to give her more guidance in the future. She was almost equivalent to leaving the sect. But in her heart, Shi Shanshan still had a deep feeling for the sect. If Yagupa could be cured, it would definitely be a big event that would make the entire Green Jade Immortal Island excited. How could Shi Shanshan, a loyal disciple of the Green Jade Immortal Island, not be overjoyed? Maybe we have to stay in the Green Jade Immortal Island for a while. Yang Chun nodded and said with a smile, when we finish these things, we will go to the Demon Continent. Going to the Demon Continent to hone their skills has always been the goal that Yang Chun and the girls had set a long time ago. Hearing this, all the girls were refreshed. They were also looking forward to this. After experiencing these things in the Central Plains Dao sects, maybe the killing in the Demon Continent would improve their state of mind more. Yagupa just maintained her injury and remained unconscious, and Yang Chun did not cure her. Who knows if she would fight with Yangchun as soon as she woke up now. And many things had to wait for Shi Shanshan and the people of the Green Jade Immortal Island to make it clear before they could do anything. Otherwise, Yangchun was not that kind of good person. After the group of people packed up, they went straight to the East China Sea Green Jade Immortal Island. The harvest this time was simply beyond everyone's expectations, especially Yangchun. He would never have thought that there would be such a good thing as ninth water spiritual solution in this secret plane. There was also an immortal body left, which was even more unexpected. Speaking of the secret plane, Yangchun suddenly came up with an idea. The last time the Taishaman's consciousness clone descended, it was to tell them the location and danger of the secret plane. Maybe the next time he crosses the border with Li Liheng, he would also tell him this good news so that the Taishaman would be happy. He believed that at that time, the faces of the Taishaman's high-level officials would be very wonderful. Chapter 982. When everyone rushed to the Green Jade Immortal Island, it was already half a year later. This place was very far from the Green Jade Immortal Island. Even if it was Yangchun's shuttle, it took 6 months to arrive. Shi Shanshan didn't hide anything about Guan Jinyao in front of everyone in the sect, and she told them the whole story. Apart from the final punishment, everything else was revealed in full. Of course, Shi Shanshan wouldn't say that Yangchun knocked down Yagupa with one punch. She only said that a few people desperately blocked Yagupa, and after Shi Shanshan subdued Guan Jinyao, Yagupa stopped by herself. As for Yagupa's injury, a few people didn't control it at once. Anyway, everyone knew that Yangchun had a very powerful defensive magic weapon, and it was normal for several people to work together to block Yagupa's attack. On the contrary, Shi Shanshan subdued Guan Jinyao alone, which made all the high-level members look at her with admiration. The existence of Yagupa approved Shi Shanshan's statement, at least half of it. No one in the sect knew that Yagupa had been taken outside by Guan Jinyao, and Yagupa was asked to kill people. From this point of view, Guan Jinyao had a lot of suspicion. Guan Jinyao was also the focus of the sect, but as Guan Jinyao herself said, after Shi Shanshan appeared, the sect allocated a part of its resources to provide Shi Shanshan. It was precisely because of this that Guan Jinyao felt that Shi Shanshan robbed her position in the sect, so she would do this. In fact, Guan Jinyao entered the Yuanying stage a long time earlier than Shi Shanshan, but she has been trapped in the peak Yuanying stage and has never been able to break through, because there was a problem in her state of mind, and some things couldn't be seen. Now everyone thought about it, but turned out to be entangled in this, which really made people speechless. The Green Jade Immortal Island attached great importance to every genius disciple. In fact, there was no bias toward one or a few, but some people couldn't see it and always thought that what belonged to them was taken away. Such people, cultivating to the peak Yuanying stage, was already the limit. If one state of mind did not grow, how could one achieve Mahayana? In this way, the disappearance and death of several genius disciples in the Green Jade Immortal Island before may also be because of Guan Jinyao. As long as they investigated Guan Jinyao's whereabouts at the time of the incident, they might be able to confirm it. Harming fellow disciples was a huge crime in any Taoist sect. If the sect allowed this to happen, then it wouldn't be far from falling apart. Of course, some small disagreements were unavoidable, but they could not escalate to the point of life and death. Can Yagupa's injury be treated? The senior members of the Green Jade Immortal Island didn't pursue too much about Guan Jinyao, but when Shi Shanshan said that Yangchun could cure Yagupa, all the senior members were surprised and then ecstatic. Yagupa's combat power, apart from those great elders, was firmly ranked at the forefront of all the Deshang stage masters of the Green Jade Immortal Island. This was not an exaggeration, but an actual battle record. Every Deshang stage master of the Green Jade Immortal Island has fought against Yagupa. However, no one could defeat Yagupa's dragon head crutch. Unfortunately, Yagupa didn't have too much consciousness. In most cases, she only responded to killing intent, and at other times, she wouldn't take the initiative to fight at all, which made the people of the Green Jade Immortal Island feel regretful. They didn't know what method Guan Jinyao used to make Yagupa listen to her command and kill people for Guan Jinyao. Guan Jinyao's practice had already provoked public anger. But Yagupa was innocent. She was just a poor person who was implicated, and she was still a poor person with strong combat power. Now Yang Chun actually said that he could cure Yagupa, which made everyone overjoyed. Once Yagupa recovered, it would be no less than adding 2 more Deshang stage masters to the Green Jade Immortal Island. You know, even if 2 masters of the middle Deshang stage joined forces, they were not as powerful as Yagupa. Can she really be cured? The Lord of Tantai asked again with some disbelief. There is an 80% chance. Yang Chun had already diagnosed Yagupa in detail along the way, and the answer was not 100% sure. But some words must be made clear in advance, so as not to ask for trouble in the future. Of course, it may also fail. If it fails, what will be the consequences? The Lord of Tantai looked at Yagupa, who was still very weak, and asked with some worry. The consequence of failure is that she may be even crazier. Yang Chun replied truthfully, and it is likely that she will no longer be so peaceful, killing people on sight. In this case, the consequences were quite serious. Yagupa, who burned her brain and became an idiot, could be said to be safe on weekdays, but once she killed people on sight, no one in the Green Jade Immortal Island could stop Yagupa. This was the Green Jade Immortal Island. Once Yagupa went crazy, it was estimated that within 1,000 miles, it would be in ruins. It's a big deal. I'll take the liberty to ask, what is going on with Yagupa's injury? The Lord of Tantai couldn't make a decision for a while, and as for the other elders, they were also pondering. As a last resort, the Lord of Tantai could only get more things from Yang Chun for judgment. To put it bluntly, the root cause is still her cultivation deviation. Yang Chun's words were equivalent to not saying anything. Several elders of the Green Jade Immortal Island who heard this couldn't help but roll their eyes in their hearts. Who wouldn't say this kind of thing? Do they still need Yang Chun to say it? Actually, I have learned about Yagupa's life, and I probably know why she went crazy. Immediately afterward, Yang Chun's words made everyone interested. It was also good for them to be able to understand the reason for a master's cultivation deviation. At least they could avoid problems in their cultivation for the same reason in the future. The root cause of Yagupa's cultivation deviation lies in her invincibility. Yang Chun's words sounded slowly. Since Yagupa was promoted to the Deshang stage, she has never been defeated in all the battles she has experienced. This has also led to Yagupa's eccentric character that doesn't put the world in her eyes. This is the root cause. Yagupa thinks that she is invincible in the world, so she has no scruples when cultivating, so she will go crazy. Yang Chun's words were not fast, and everyone heard it very clearly. Yang Chun's words were also more implicit, but everyone had already understood. Yagupa thought that she was invincible in the world, so her state of mind had been unable to improve, and the result of forced cultivation was the result of cultivation deviation. She was arrogant and always believed in it in her heart, so there would be such an ending. What can be done to cure it? The Lord of Tantai was speechless for a while, and then asked softly. Chapter 983. It's actually very simple. Yang Chun smiled and said slowly in the eyes of everyone, defeat her and let her know that she is not invincible in the world. Everyone present was stunned for a while. Everyone looked at each other, and all fell into a speechless silence. Defeating Yagupa, it was easy to say if it could be defeated, why wait until now? In hundreds of years, no one has been able to do it, even when Yagupa has lost her mind. Yang Chun's 4 whys have now been enlightened. Since the cause of Yagupa's cultivation deviation has been found, in fact, Yang Chun has cured Yagupa's madness, but because he hasn't negotiated with the Green Jade Immortal Island, he hasn't treated her injury yet. One punch made Yagupa vomit blood, and he was unscathed. Was it considered defeating Yagupa? There was no need for everyone to say anything more about this. What they saw with their own eyes, or what happened to their husband, made the 4 women sincerely proud. Unfortunately, this kind of pride could only be known by the 4 of them and couldn't be said to others. If others were to know that Yang Chun alone defeated the number 1 expert of the Green Jade Immortal Island besides the Taishaman with 1 punch, it was unknown how many people would go crazy. They also knew that their husband was not a person who would be so casual and high profile. Although he was now the only fifth-grade alchemist master in the world and was already very high profile, the more cards he had, the better. Yagupa has been like this for 300 years, right? The Lord of Tantai did not make a decision directly, but said this sentence in a nostalgic tone. A question made several elders around him couldn't help but sigh. Yagupa, who was so powerful in the past, was now an idiot who couldn't speak. How big was the contrast? People couldn't help but sigh. It's been more than 300 years. One of the elders also replied with some nostalgia. Instead of living like this, maybe in her heart, she would rather die. The Lord of Tantai followed the elder's words and said again. Everyone present was a master, and they all nodded with some sadness in their hearts. Let Elder Titan prepare. If it doesn't work, let Yagupa go. The island master finally made a decision, and it was also a somewhat cruel decision. Let her go easily. Obviously, this was the island master's agreement to let Yang Chun treat her. Even the consequences of failure had been considered, and he had arranged for the Great Elder to prepare. Except for the Great Elder, it was impossible for others to deal with Yagupa. As for Yang Chen's words, no one doubted it at all. Everyone believed that since he said that he had an 80% chance to cure Yagupa, then he must have such a big chance. If he said there would be any possible consequences after failure, then there must be such consequences. If he said there would be any possible consequences after failure, then there must be such consequences. This was Shi Shanshan's sect. Even if Yang Chun would not do this kind of thing for free, he could also look at Shi Shanshan's face and wait for Yagupa to recover. Yagupa's injury was nothing in Yang Chen's hands. A fifth-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill was enough. What mattered was her mind. Yagupa's injury was nothing in Yang Chen's hands. A fifth-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill was enough. What mattered was her mind. The injury of Yagupa was nothing in Yang Chen's hands. A fifth-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill was enough. The important thing was her mind. To stimulate the mind of Yagupa, Yang Chun needed to use a powerful spiritual awareness to shake it. It was also a life-and-death step for Yagupa, and no one could disturb her. Stimulating Yagupa's mind required Yang Chun to use his powerful spiritual awareness to shock, which was also a step of life and death for Yagupa, and no one could disturb her. After all, Yang Chun had only used his physical strength to cause damage and did not have the same effect as the continuous destruction caused by his spiritual power. At present, Yagupa's mind was still controlled by Yang Chun, and she couldn't wake up until Yang Chun felt that the injury on Yagupa's body had completely improved. Then he pressed one hand on the back of Yagupa's head and suddenly used the beast-controlling secret art to launch a spiritual awareness shock attack on Yagupa's sea of consciousness. This attack can't be too strong, otherwise Yagupa will directly die from brain death, but can't be too weak, otherwise it won't have the effect. Fortunately, Yang Chen's spiritual sense was now strong to a certain extent, and he could control it with ease, almost without the slightest error. Then, Yang Chen and Shi Shanshan quickly left the quiet room and were replaced by Grand Elder Tong. Once Yagupa couldn't recover, Elder Tong was the candidate to end Yagupa's pain. Of course, to deal with Yagupa, Elder Tong would not be completely without a price. The price she had to pay was to open the seal formation and immediately ascend. Because of Elder Tong, this time they chose a quiet room on a remote island, and the surrounding area had been emptied, lest Elder Tong's tribulation and ascend would implicate others. In the expectation of a group of people, there were no tribulation clouds gathering in the sky, which meant that Elder Tong had not unlocked the seal. Similarly, this also meant that Yagupa was fine for the time being. The senior executives of the Green Jade Immortal Island, who were waiting anxiously, finally began to slowly feel relieved. After waiting for another half an hour, there was nothing unusual at all, and then they heard Elder Tong's call, "Okay, it's okay." A group of people couldn't wait to rush to the island and rushed into the quiet room, and then everyone was stunned. Opposite Elder Tong, there was a middle-aged woman with tears on her face. Although there were faint crow's feet on her face, It was by no means the appearance of an old woman before. The appearance of this middle-aged woman was Yagupa before she went crazy. "Greetings, Island Master." In the surprised eyes of everyone, Yagupa stood up and bowed to the group of people who came in. "Greetings, Elder." All the high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island who came in, except for Elder Tong. Everyone else had a dumbfounded expression. Yagupa, could she speak? And looking at her performance, did she really return to normal? This old woman used to be arrogant, short-sighted, and 300 years of mute was like a dream. Facing a group of senior executives of the Green Jade Immortal Island, Yagupa bowed her head again and said, "Finally, it's a blessing in disguise, and I understand the way of heaven and earth. This disciple is willing to wait for the sect for 500 years. Please allow the Island Master." Yagupa's strength was strong. This mute, her mind was free of distractions, and naturally, her cultivation base went up to the next level. Now that her mind was restored, she understood that today was yesterday, and her state of mind was improved, and she immediately reached the edge of ascension. Waiting for the sect was to repay the sect's care over the years, and this awakening grace. Chapter 984. Everyone had some expectations in their hearts at the beginning, but no one dared to really put their hopes on Yangchun. Even if Yangchun could cure the trauma of Yagupa, the confusion brought about by her cultivation deviation was not something that could be treated by any medicinal pill. Not to mention defeating Yagupa, a master of the Deshang stage. It was even more impossible. But now Yagupa was standing in front of everyone. She was sane, speaking orderly, and acting naturally. There was nothing wrong with her. Could it be that Yangchun had defeated Yagupa? How was this possible? Everyone who thought of this possibility subconsciously gave the answer that it was impossible. But what was going on with Yagupa's current situation? Someone defeated her? Who was it? Min Huafeng was impatient and asked immediately. I also vaguely remember being defeated, but who beat me and how? I can't remember. Yagupa also had a confused face, and her answer was ambiguous. It seems that this question can only be asked carefully by Yangchun and the others. For now, let's look at Yagupa's situation first. In any case, the Green Jade Immortal Island had another master at the level of the Great Elder, and their strength was once again stronger. The group of people almost rushed back to the main island of the Green Jade Immortal Island with joy. Yagupa had been muddle-headed these years and didn't know what happened to her at all. When she heard the narration of others, she also sighed. Especially Guan Jinyao even used herself as a tool, which made Yagupa even more angry. Despite being in that kind of idiotic state, fighting was still her instinct. How many times had she experienced it? She still vaguely remembered it. In addition to the sparring with several masters in the sect, the extra ones that the sect didn't know were obviously Guan Jinyao's doing. These contents recalled by Yagupa became the ironclad evidence of Guan Jinyao's bad intentions. Even if Guan Jinyao had a mouth all over her body now, she couldn't explain it clearly. The crime was completely confirmed, and no one doubted it anymore. After some greetings, Yagupa finally came to Yangchun and his wife, thanking Yangchun for saving her. For Yangchun and Shanshan, when Yagupa went crazy, they had not yet joined the sect. Now that a senior of such high seniority came to thank her, Shanshan did not dare to be arrogant and hurriedly returned the gesture. Yangchun, on the other hand, received a solid bow before greeting him according to the etiquette of a junior. To be able to save Yagupa, Yangchun took great credit, and it was right to receive her salute. No one had any opinion on this. This old woman vaguely remembers that the last time was when I was defeated. Yagupa's trip, first, was to thank the grace of saving her, and second, she wanted to know who the master who defeated her was. This old woman wants to know, who is that master? Not only Yagupa, but even the Lord of Tantai and others who followed behind had a curious expression, waiting for Yangchun to answer. What kind of person happened to appear when Yangchun and others were besieged? It's not anyone else, it's you, senior. Yangchun smiled and began to answer directly. But his answer made everyone confused. I defeated myself? Where did this come from? Myself? Yagupa also had a puzzled expression. Yang Chen's words were really incredible, and she couldn't figure out the key to it even if she thought about it. There was no way. Although she vaguely remembered fighting a few times, she couldn't remember the process of the battle at all. Senior didn't have much judgment at the time. A small illusion formation was enough to trap Senior. Yang Chen smiled and explained, coupled with a strength recoil, Senior completely defeated herself. Yang Chen's words, on the one hand, concealed his own strength. On the other hand, it made Yagupa's psychology a lot better. Being defeated by a few younger generation juniors, no matter what, it was still a loss of face. But being trapped by the illusion formation during her muddle-headedness, and then the strength recoil hurt herself, there was nothing shameful about it. After all, Yagupa was unconscious at that time, and she couldn't distinguish between illusion and reality. Sure enough, as soon as Yang Chen said this, Yagupa's face suddenly improved a lot. The other senior members of the Green Jade Immortal Island also looked like they suddenly realized something. This statement was carefully considered, and Gong Sunling herself was an array cultivator. Everyone was very clear, and no one doubted anything else. Next, naturally, the Green Jade Immortal Island would not let Yang Chen take out a 5th-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill for nothing. Even if there was a relationship with Shi Shanshan, it was impossible to accept Yang Chen's gift for no reason. Therefore, after several excuses, Yang Chen reluctantly accepted a 6th-grade fire seed as a reward, and both sides were happy. For the Green Jade Immortal Island, the recovery of Yagupa meant that there was another great elder of the Deshang stage who was about to ascend, and her strength had skyrocketed. Moreover, it was an extra one out of thin air. In the past, Yagupa even had to drag a few people to take care of her. When it came to a real battle, it was useless. As long as the opponent was like Yang Chen and the others, an illusion formation could take care of her. No one doubted Yang Chen's alchemy and medical skills anymore. There were even a few elders who asked Yang Chen to help refine a batch of resident appearance pill through Shi Shanshan. They were willing to provide enough medicinal materials and remuneration for such a request. Yang Chen reluctantly agreed to it for the sake of Shi Shanshan's face. He himself also used this method to increase the status of Shi Shanshan in the eyes of the high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island. Not to mention her powerful combat power and excellent cultivation aptitude. She could also let Yang Chen refine the medicinal pill. The sect couldn't help but attach importance to her, refining the appearance pill, and it was still the simple appearance pill of the 9 Heavens Dark Maiden. For Yang Chen, it was not too difficult. With a sufficient supply of medicinal ingredients, it took less than 3 months to produce a batch of more than 30 pills, which far exceeded the number of medicinal ingredients provided by the elders who had requested and provided them. However, these medicinal materials were all thousands of years, and the appearance pill could only last for 100 years. No woman would dislike her youthful and beautiful appearance, and naturally, no woman would dislike the appearance pill. The elders who obtained the age-halting pill all treated it as a treasure and kept it properly. For Yang Chen, they were even more grateful. After settling Yagupa, settling Guan Jinyao's affairs, and curing the appearance pill for the elders, Yang Chen and others set out on the road again. This time, they were not going to the Demon Continent immediately, but went straight to the South China Sea, to the Sea of No Return, and stored the immortal body obtained from the secret plane in the empty Dragon Palace. Yang Chen's split spiritual sense seed has been preserved, and this immortal body was Yang Chen's last reliance. Chapter 985. It's not that Yang Chen doesn't want to use the immortal body to cultivate, it's just that the 3 purities secret art is like this. The first split of the spiritual awareness is just a split of a seed of spiritual awareness, which is a chance to recover after the death of the main body. However, this seed of spiritual awareness can't be cultivated when the main body exists. For Yang Chen, he can only watch his own seed of spiritual awareness attached to the immortal body, drooling in vain on the immortal body that has experienced the great Luo heavenly tribulation, and he can never cultivate. It can't be helped that this is a huge temptation. if Yang Chun can be ruthless and start over by himself. With the help of the immortal body, he may be able to raise his cultivation base to a jaw-dropping realm in a short period of time. However, in that case, is it still himself? No one will commit suicide in exchange for a better cultivation opportunity. Even Yang Chun can't make this determination. Not to mention that his current body is a full-value acquired spirit root of all attributes, but he has not experienced a higher tribulation. His future achievements will not be worse than that of the immortal body with a single attribute. Rushing to the sea of no return, Yang Chun didn't want others to know. He just took his 4 lovely wives and went directly through the bottom of the sea. With the treasure of the shuttle, plus the sea jasper, he was not afraid of being discovered by others. At the periphery of the sea of no return, Yang Chun put down the 4 women. There is no way the interior of the sea of no return is dangerous. Without the 5-element hook of the Dragon Clan, they can't go down at all. And the 5-element hook, at present, only Yang Chun can use it. The last time Wan Qian's 5 female apprentices were directly thrown out of the medicine garden was still vivid in his mind, and Yang Chun was not willing to let his wives take risks. With Gong Suanling's geographical map of the mountains and rivers, Yang Chun let them wander around the periphery of the sea of no return was also very relieved. The sea beasts here were extremely fierce, and it was a good place to cultivate their fighting consciousness. Yang Chun alone once again entered the interior of the sea of no return. This time, Xiao Tian was also very awake, and he was very excited to revisit the old place. Arriving at the original location of the Dragon Palace, Yang Chun suddenly released the Dragon Palace before he placed the immortal body there. Last time, Yang Chun controlled the Dragon Palace to integrate the Dragon Clan treasure house after Xiao Tian swallowed the dragon bead. But it was obvious that the integration was definitely not as thorough as Xiao Tian's personal operation. This time, Yang Chun released the Dragon Palace and let Xiao Tian personally control it and completely integrate the two. The immortal body and the 7 treasures glazed box were placed in the 10th water spiritual liquid by Yang Chun. Since the last time Yang Chun collected it, it had slowly accumulated some more, but it was only a thin layer. A eternal spring nourishing formation was placed here, which could be used to nourish the immortal body with the help of the 10th water spiritual liquid. After it was temporarily settled, waiting for the process of Xiao Tian controlling the Dragon Palace to integrate the treasure house, Yang Chun was not idle and once again made a spiritual awareness contact with Li Liheng and Taishaman. During this period of time, every year or so, Yang Chun would contact Li Liheng once, and it had almost become a fixed rule. However, Li Liheng's consumption of spirit congealing pills was getting more and more. A single contact had already used about 10 pills. At this rate, in a maximum of 10 years, the spirit congealing pills that Yang Chun refined would be consumed. The time of each contact was long and short, but almost every time it was to instruct Li Liheng and other Taishamen on some cultivation. Judging from Li Liheng's increasingly proud performance, he has gained an absolute position in Taishamen. This was a good thing, and Yang Chun was happy to facilitate it. Letting a guy without talent and virtue ascend to the high position of Taishamen was also the first step of the plan. But today, Yang Chun intended to make Taishamen depressed. When I was chatting with a predecessor of another sect recently, the predecessor occasionally said that he still remembered that one of his predecessors left a secret plane in the mortal world. Senior Lu Fengzi said to Li Liheng, "You write down the method to open the secret plane and go and get those things." Li Liheng was overjoyed. A secret plane left by a predecessor of the spiritual world. Needless to say, it was full of good things. Needless to say, just the medicinal materials could be boiled into peerless treasures. He didn't dare to leave a word. Li Liheng firmly remembered the instructions of Senior Lu Fengzi and repeated it to Senior Lu Fengzi. After there were no more problems, Senior Lu Fengzi was relieved. In this secret plane, there are many dangers. The predecessor who left is not a good man or woman. You have to be careful, otherwise the consequences will be unimaginable. Senior Lu Fengzi seemed to be still worried and warned again. Of course, Li Liheng promised that he would be careful. After spending 10 spirit congealing pills, he ended the contact with Senior Lu Fengzi. When the key to the ancient secret plane of Taishaman broke out last time, Li Liheng was not present, so he was not very clear about it. With his character, these things that had nothing to do with him would not pay much attention to them afterwards. And at that time, he was suffering from the pain of fainting for no reason. How could he care about the secret plane? This time, he got an ancient secret plane, and he was excited. Under the gaze of the core senior members of the Greatest Heaven sect who were waiting anxiously, Li Liheng quickly explained the process of this exchange. Hearing that there was an ancient secret plane, everyone was excited for a while. But when Li Liheng excitedly told the news of the ancient secret plane, he thought he could see the excited expressions of the sect master and elders. But to his surprise, he only saw frustration. What kind of expression was this? Li Liheng looked at the elders with some puzzlement. It was still sect master Li who knew Li Liheng. Seeing his puzzled appearance, he reminded him, "This secret plane is the secret plane that made us lose a few Deshang stage elders." The excitement instantly turned into consternation. Li Liheng looked at the crowd, dumbfounded, and his mind was confused. Senior Lu Fengzi said that the secret plane left by the predecessor of the predecessor. How could it become a disaster? Did Senior Lu Fengzi say to be careful? Sect Master Li asked in a low voice. For Lu Fengzi, who he had never met and could not meet, he vaguely had a trace of doubt. What did it mean to take out a secret plane that almost everyone knew? The predecessor told me to be careful. That predecessor is not a good man or a good woman. Li Liheng hurriedly said the advice of Senior Lu Fengzi. But even if he thought about it, he couldn't understand how the secret plane passed down by the predecessor of the spiritual world became a secret plane that has been excavated. Wait and see the next contact. Sect Masterly sighed. He didn't know what kind of thoughts he had in his mind. Chapter 986. After playing with the Taishaman a little, Yang Chun settled his avatar immortal body, and then went to the location of the Dragon Palace to check the situation of the Dragon Palace's integration with the treasure house. Last time, Yang Chun had completed the initial integration. This time, Xiao Tian personally controlled it. It was even easier. In less than a month, the integration was completely completed, and it was still the deepest level of integration. For more than a month, the women were a little anxious. Fortunately, Gong Sunling also experienced such waiting last time, knowing that the inside of the sea of no return was extremely dangerous. So after explaining to the other three women, everyone joined hands to deal with those sea beasts to practice. It didn't seem too boring. Yang Chun came out of the sea of no return. They haven't seen him for more than a month, but when the women looked at Yang Chun, they clearly saw a different aura from before from him. It was a kind of pleasant self-confidence. It was absolutely impossible to see it if it was not the close people around Yang Chun. That kind of self-confidence, even beyond life and death, there was no feeling of fear anymore. It could be understood that when a person has an immortal body as his own avatar, and once the main body dies, the avatar will wake up again, and with almost all his memories, no one would be afraid of death. This state of not being afraid of death would naturally affect the state of mind of the main body, turning it into a kind of fearless thought. Was there a better way to improve the cultivation base than this? How many years has it been since everyone entered the Yuanying stage? When most people were consolidating their realm, Yang Chun seems to have begun to hit the peak of the early Yuanying stage. Everyone has been away from the sect for many years, and they all have to go back. Shi Shanshan just went back not long ago, but Sun Qingxue has never returned to the Blue Cloud sect. Sun Qingxue was going back to her mother's home, so she had to bring some gifts back. Now, the primary appearance pill refined by Yang Chun has become the most sought-after product. When he was in the Green Jade Immortal Island last time, he refined some more just so that Sun Qingxue could take it back as a gift. Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue seemed to be advancing and retreating together. The two women did not want to return to Chunyang Palace at this time. They just made an appointment with Yang Chun to meet again and then rushed to Blue Cloud sect together. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling naturally followed Yang Chun back to Chunyang Palace. Returning to the sect, In addition to communicating with the palace master and the elders, Yang Chen also had another purpose, which was to wait for the Taishaman to extend the bamboo pole again. More than half of the spirit-congealing pills have been consumed, and the rest is definitely not enough for Li Liheng to persist for 50 years. This point was very clear to the high-level members of Taishaman, but there was no way. The pill recipe in his hand has not only been verified by the masters of the medicinal hall, but even the spirit-congealing pill recipe left by Senior Lu Fengzi was exactly the same. There was no problem with the pill recipe, but there was no alchemist. This made the Taishaman depressed to the extreme. In desperation, they could only come to Yang Chen again. Mao Qi, who vowed to never see Yang Chen again, has been waiting in Taishaman for a full 5 years. He couldn't help but come. Li Liheng's communication with Senior Lu Fengzi over the years has brought many benefits to the sect. Mao Qi was very clear from beginning to end, and even his own cultivation base had a small improvement. All of these were based on Li Liheng's normal cultivation of the spatial spiritual awareness cultivation method, and the foundation of Li Liheng's normal cultivation was the spirit congealing pill. Without the spirit congealing pill, there was nothing. There was no Li Liheng, no Lu Fengzi, no future guidance from the seniors. Even if he had made an oath, he had to break the oath at this time. As Sect Masterly asked at that time, did he make an oath with his heart demon? Since it wasn't, then it must be Mao Qi, Hall Master Mao, who asked the Taishaman to deal with Yang Chen the most times and was most familiar with Yang Chen. Why are you here again? This was the first sentence that Yang Chen blurted out when he saw Hall Master Mao. His face was full of impatience and a look of surprise. Mao Qi's face turned black directly. What do you mean again? Do you think I want to come? But his face only turned black for a moment, and he returned to normal immediately. Now, the Taishaman needed Yang Chen's help. It was not the time to fall out with Yang Chen. Moreover, Yang Chen didn't say much, did he? What medicinal pill are you refining this time? In front of Mao Qi, Yang Chen rarely did not have to be as polite as in front of other outsiders. He sat down and sat opposite Mao Qi. He reached out and grabbed the teapot to pour tea for Mao Qi while asking, "Spirit congealing pill." Mao Qi was also not polite to Yang Chen. He reached out and grabbed the teacup and took a big sip, then lazily spat out 3 words and said helplessly, "Spirit congealing pill." Yang Chen had a puzzled look on his face. He stared at Mao Qi and even asked in an incredible tone, "Senior Mao, you have nothing to do. Are you throwing the spirit congealing pill for fun? Or Taishamen have too many good things and you have to rush to give them to me? I'm embarrassed." Mao Qi almost jumped up in anger. "What do you mean throwing the spirit congealing pill for fun? Do you think I want to come here to find you?" How could Mao Qi not hear the teasing tone in Yang Chen's words? Moreover, Yang Chen did not hide it. He clearly told Mao Qi that he was extorting him several times before. Why did he come to the door to let him knock now? Now he was embarrassed to knock. "I can't help it. More than one person needs it." Mao Qi couldn't get angry yet. He could only forcibly suppress his anger and calmly explained, "Give me a price." Anyway, Mao Qi and Yang Chen have dealt with each other more than once or twice. There's not so much greeting between the two. Straightforward is the style of the two people to discuss business. How much? Yang Chen did not struggle with why the Taishaman wanted so many spirit congealing pills, nor did he directly offer a price, but asked a number. If he didn't figure out the number, how could he speak? Last time, the Taishaman learned a lesson. They were afraid that the spirit congealing pill for 50 years was not enough. They deliberately asked Yang Chen to refine almost 5% more as a reserve, but they didn't expect that the consumption would be so high. This time, in addition to having enough to treat the disease, they also need a large number of extra pills. 50 years have passed. Almost half of it is now gone, and there are only a few left. This time, the Taishaman decided to get enough at one time, so as not to bother Yang Chen in the future. 5,000. Mao Qi gritted his teeth and said this number. His heart couldn't help but tremble, and there was a faint pain. This number was enough for Yang Chen to offer a price that would make the Taishaman speechless. When he thought that the resources that could have been enjoyed by the Taishaman disciples were now handed over to the alchemist master in front of him, Mao Qi couldn't help but feel distressed. Chapter 987. 5,000. Even Yang Chun couldn't help but be stunned. With such a large number, even if Yang Chun refined it himself, it would take a few years. Taishaman really put in a lot of money this time. Were they not afraid of being knocked down by him? He didn't expect Taishaman to have such great courage. In Yang Chen's mind, they would only give enough medicinal pills to treat Li Liheng. He didn't expect that they would be so generous. This was better. First, it would save him from having to come to the door every once in a while to accumulate hatred. Second, Yang Chun didn't want to spend more time on spirit-congealing pills. It was best to solve it at once. What else would I like? Yang Chun didn't directly offer a price, but asked. Mao Qi rolled his eyes and showed an expression of, "I knew it," on his face. It seemed that the elder of the Foreign Affairs Hall of Taishaman would only show such a helpless expression in front of Yang Chun. Everything that happened here, if it was spread outside, it was not known how many people would be shocked. The notes of the best alchemy masters in Taishaman in the past 10,000 years. Is it enough? Mao Qi said, while observing Yang Chen's reaction. Mao Qi and other high-level officials of Taishaman carefully studied Yang Chun and found that in addition to fire seeds, he only wanted medicinal materials and rarely wanted anything else. Even if he wanted it, it would be given to others, not for his own use. In this way, Yang Chun liked to study the way of alchemy, so they could only cater to his liking. Within 10,000 years, Yang Chun closed his eyes and began to ponder. The experience of these alchemy masters was indeed coveted. Even if Taishaman was not a specialized alchemy sect, the notes of the masters accumulated for 10,000 years were also very rare and good things for him. 1,000. After thinking for a while, Yang Chun finally gave a number. These notes could be exchanged for 1,000 spirit-congealing pills. Hearing the number reported by Yang Chun, Mao Qi's heart settled down for a while. Sure enough, what Yang Chun loved was the Tao of alchemy and exploring the profoundness of alchemy. The things he had been given to him previously were truly a waste. If he had known earlier, he would have used these alchemy notes that could be copied by the jade slip to exchange for it. How many 7th-grade fire seeds and more than 100,000 years old spirit medicines could be saved? In addition to the 2 pill scriptures passed down from the spiritual realm, Mao Qi and Yang Chun were like 2 profiteers, gradually increasing their bargaining chips. Who are you trying to fool? Yang Chen's face was full of disdain. Suddenly, his expression changed as if he was looking at an old swindler. Passed down from the spiritual realm? Why don't you say it's from the immortal world? Who knows, I might be able to exchange for more. As soon as Yang Chen's pretentious performance came out, Mao Qi immediately felt a sense of balance in his heart. A small sect was a small sect. The means and consumption of some big sects were simply unimaginable. In the eyes of Yang Chun, the things passed down from the spiritual realm and the immortal world were impossible, but in the eyes of Taishaman, it was not so mysterious. Young man, sometimes what you don't understand doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Mao Qi's heart was as comfortable as drinking a large glass of ice water in the summer. He slowly picked up the teacup and took a sip. Finally, there was a little pride of a big sect. It was rare to have an opportunity to put on the appearance of a senior in front of Yang Chun. Mao Qi was simply happy on his face and cool in his heart. So what if he was a 5th-grade alchemist master? Wasn't he from a small family? He didn't even know the means of some big sect? The things passed down from the spiritual realm and the immortal world are not impossible, Mao Qi said slowly. He glanced at Yang Chen's slightly open mouth and a little surprised expression again, and his heart was filled with uncontrollable happiness. This was simply the most comfortable meeting with Yang Chun for so many times, which made Mao Qi somewhat happy. How good would it be if every meeting was like this? How could Mao Qi be depressed to the point of swearing not to see Yang Chun again? It was a rare enjoyment. Mao Qi definitely had to put on airs and give Yang Chun a good lesson. It's not a big deal. It's just that they have to pay the price of several masters' thousands of years of cultivation. Mao Qi tried to use the most understated expression and tone to say this matter, while not forgetting to enjoy the incredible expression on Yang Chen's face after hearing it. The price of thousands of years of cultivation? Yang Chen's performance at the moment was as if he had heard such an outrageous thing for the first time. What he had always thought was correct fell apart in front of him as if the whole world had collapsed. He asked foolishly, "Is there really something passed down?" Such a performance was too normal. The common sense that he had heard since he was a child had been subverted. No one could suddenly accept it. Moreover, for a small sect, it was simply unimaginable for the spiritual realm and the immortal world to pay such a price to pass down something. Yang Chun didn't seem to doubt that Mao Qi would lie to him. Of course, at this moment, when Mao Qi needed help from Yang Chun, if he still lied to Yang Chun, it was no less than digging a hole for himself. In this case, it meant that what Mao Qi said was true. There was really such a thing. Of course, at the moment, Mao Qi's sense of superiority as a big sect couldn't be suppressed. He seemed to be thinking about whether he could take the opportunity to recruit Yang Chun. However, he also understood the priorities of the matter. First, he had to do the things at hand, and then talk about the extra. 2 pill scriptures of the spiritual realm. After the initial surprise, Yang Chun began to ponder again. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, 2 pill scriptures of the spiritual realm for 1,500 pills. To be honest, Yang Chen's previous life was only a 6th grade alchemist master. There were many talented high-level alchemist masters who even reached this level in the spiritual realm. Exchanging so many spirit-congealing pills with the pill scriptures of a high-level alchemist master in Taishaman, Yang Chun would definitely earn a lot. What if I had a pill scripture handed down from the immortal world? Mao Qi's head was almost raised to the sky, and his voice was high above as if a few words were smashed down from the sky. He could use such an attitude in front of Yang Chun. Mao Qi didn't even dare to think about it before he came. If he had known that Yang Chun liked such things, he would have used these to trade in the first few times. He could save good things, and he could enjoy this feeling of being bossy. However, it's not too late to know now. He will know how to deal with Yang Chun in the future. Hearing the pill scripture handed down from the immortal world, Yang Chen's breathing was already a lot heavier. He was wheezing like a small bellows, and his eyes were a little red. How about the remaining 2,500? This time, it was Yang Chen's turn to ask carefully, waiting for Mao Qi to agree. Mao Qi was almost excited to shed tears. Heaven, earth, finally, there was Yang Chun who had to wait for his own decision. Yang Chun, you also have this day? Chapter 988. Not enough. Mao Qi began to shake his head directly. It was not easy to get hold of Yang Chen's pulse. If he didn't make a good profit, how could Mao Qi, the master of the Foreign Affairs Hall, show his skill? Moreover, the grievances suffered in the past. How could he get it back with interest today? Not enough. Yang Chen's face recovered a little, and it didn't look like the kind of shock before. But he was still a little surprised by Mao Qi's words and couldn't help but ask. Yes, not enough. Mao Qi deliberately repeated it, and also emphasized the word not enough. After a pause, he continued, plus 30-second grade questioning inner heart pills. Maybe it's almost enough. This time it was Yang Chen's turn to start considering. Mao Qi was planning to get back all the previous losses at once. Of course, he wanted to appreciate Yang Chen's embarrassed expression. He did not urge him. He sat there as steady as Mount Tai and slowly sipped tea. His mind was full of unspeakable thoughts. Little did he know, Yang Chen almost burst his belly laughing at the moment. The affectation and performance just now really made Mao Qi believe it. It was easy to let the Taishaman no longer suspect that he had done something in the spatial spiritual awareness cultivation method. Imagine a guy who didn't even know that his consciousness clone was in the lower realm. How could he know such a secret thing? As for the pill scripture, Yang Chun really needed it. But to let Yang Chun accept Mao Qi's new price tag, it was absolutely impossible. 5,000 spirit congealing pills was the limit. Questioning inner heart pill. Don't even think about it. Forget it, the price tag is too high. This junior doesn't need the pill scripture of the immortal world. After waiting for Mao Qi to be proud for a while, Yang Chun hesitated for a long time and made up his mind. He gave an unexpected answer to Mao Qi. Anyway, this junior is only a 5th-grade alchemist master. If there really is the pill scripture of the immortal world, this junior can't use it, so I don't want it. Mao Qi's complacency directly drilled back into his body as he sucked in a mouthful of cold air. He almost burped and passed out. After saying so much and putting out a great temptation, it seemed that Yang Chun was about to fall into the trap. Suddenly, Yang Chun took drastic measures and quit. Mao Qi fell into a state of sluggishness. The pill scripture of the spiritual world was good, and the pill scripture of the immortal world was better. But these were only the resources that the Taishaman had, not the spirit-congealing pills that they urgently needed. Which of the experts in Taishaman's medicine hall had not read these pill scriptures? But in their own words, the higher the level of the pill scripture, the more difficult it was to understand. Perhaps it was because their realms were not high enough. They simply could not understand the method described in the pill scripture. If it was said that it was understandable to multitask and control multiple types of flames for alchemy, then using several different types of true water to form a fire attribute array for alchemy was simply unheard of. Using water as fire for alchemy, what kind of joke was this? But this pill scripture was obviously not a fake from other places, but the Taishaman did not know how many times they had spent their consciousness clones in the lower realm, so that the consciousness of those clones in the lower realm could piece together the memories little by little. It was absolutely impossible to be fake. This time, the Taishaman also had a good plan. Didn't Yang Chun like these things? Then they would give him a pill scripture that could not be used at all to hang his appetite, in exchange for the medicinal pills that they needed. Maybe Yang Chun would study these until he was possessed by the devil, and they could destroy Yang Chen's future quietly. It was like a primary school student who had just learned that 0 was the smallest number, and suddenly gave him a high school mathematics textbook to study and interpret imaginary numbers. He didn't even know negative numbers, let alone what was after the square root of a negative number. Maybe because there was no step-by-step progress, it would make him confused. This was why it was necessary to take 5,000 spirit-congealing pills at a time. There were enough medicinal pills. Even if it was used 10 a year, it would be enough for 500 years. 500 years was enough for Li Liheng's spiritual awareness to cultivate to a certain level, and there was no need for spirit-congealing pills. And Yang Chun must be destroyed. The plan was good, but they didn't expect this change. At least Mao Qi didn't expect it. After he finished his previous words, he thought that Yang Chun had been fascinated by the pill scripture handed down from the immortal world and would desperately take it, but he didn't expect Yang Chun to be so realistic. If he couldn't use it, he wouldn't consider it for the time being, and he wouldn't buy it at a high price. In this way, the Taishaman's plan was in vain. It doesn't matter. The problem is that the number of spirit-congealing pills is not enough, which is a big problem. Looking at the speed of Li Liheng's current use, it seems that he is getting more and more. On average, he uses 10 pills for a cross-border contact, and there is a trend of more and more. More than 2,000 pills are not enough to make the Taishaman completely relieved. Knowing that his greed had ruined the big thing, Mao Qi immediately changed his mind and said, "Then the questioning inner heart pills will be reduced by half. How about 15-second grade questioning inner heart pills?" Anyway, it was not the first time a bargain. Mao Qi was very familiar with this. It was rare for him to take the initiative again, so he had to get more things from Yang Chen's hands. Yang Chun shook his head directly. He didn't want to give more things at all. These pill scriptures, Yang Chun wanted them very much, but he would not exchange them with additional questioning inner heart pills. He wanted the Taishaman to have the pill recipe, but there was no questioning inner heart pills available. Then, Mao Qi's face became ugly again. When negotiating with Yang Chen on the price, it seemed that Mao Qi did not have the upper hand once. Every time it was how much Yang Chen said. Mao Qi was determined to change the situation this time. Still shaking his head, Yang Chen didn't even want to say anything more. This attitude made Mao Qi's heart sink, but he immediately warned himself that the purpose of this trip was to get the spirit-congealing pill and the additional questioning inner heart pill. If he couldn't get it, then he couldn't get it. He also blamed himself for being greedy. Looking at Yang Chen's tempted, he wanted to add the questioning inner heart pill. This time, The chicken and eggs were broken, and he didn't even get enough spirit-congealing pills. If he really went back like this, the sect master would never give him a good face. Well, I'm afraid of you. Mao Qi immediately made a generous appearance of a senior, patted his head, and made a decision directly, do as you say. After saying this, Mao Qi saw a playful smile on Yang Chen's face, and his heart was suddenly shocked. He had seen Yang Chen's method of asking for an exorbitant price many times. If he increased it again this time, it would not be a good thing. Thinking of this, Mao Qi didn't care about his identity, and hurriedly cried, "You can't increase the price. This price is what you said yourself. You won't go back on your words, right?" Looking at Mao Qi being so nervous, Yang Chen also gave up the plan to increase the price and kill more Taishamen. Anyway, 2 pill scriptures of the spiritual world and 1 pill scripture of the immortal world for Yang Chen. It was already an absolute profit. This was the experience of the Taishaman's alchemy master in the immortal world. Thinking about it was exciting. Chapter 989. Compared with the previous harvests, others may feel that Yang Chen had lost a lot this time. Originally, hundreds of spirit-congealing pills could be exchanged for various 6th-grade fire seeds, 6th Earth True Secret Art, 6th Earth True Essence, and the like. The last time he even got hundreds of thousands of years of spirit medicine and medicine garden. This time there were only some experience and pill scriptures. It was really not comparable. But for Yang Chen, these things were more rare than the previous medicinal materials and fire seeds. These experiences and insights in any sect were carefully collected as heirlooms. Without a certain identity in the sect, without making enough contributions, don't even think about touching them. As for the pill scriptures of the spiritual world and the immortal world, it was even rarer. Except for some pill recipes, such as the questioning inner heart pill and spirit congealing pill that had been made public, other medicinal pills were simply kept secret. Even people who were not in the sect did not know the names of some medicinal pills. It was conceivable how precious these pill scriptures were. Although Yang Chen now has an elderly lord pill scripture and an unknown immortal's Yin Dan scripture, most of the elderly lord pill scripture only talked about refining techniques, and the Yin Dan scripture only recorded the refining techniques of a dozen kinds of medicinal pills, which could not meet the needs of Yang Chen, who wanted to become an alchemy master in the future. Taishaman took the initiative to tempt him with the pill scriptures of the spiritual world and the immortal world this time. That was because they still couldn't understand the preciousness of these pill scriptures. Otherwise, they would not be so prodigal as to give away the pill scripture that the elders of their sect had spent a lot of effort on. Mao Qi was definitely prepared this time. After negotiating the price with Yang Chen, he immediately took out dozens of jade slips and handed them to Yang Chen. This was Yang Chen's usual habit: pay the money first, and then take the medicine. After several previous transactions, Taishamen were quite satisfied with the credibility of Yang Chen. So they didn't care about taking out the reward first and let Mao Qi bring it directly, saving them from running back and forth and wasting time. After a rough scan with his spiritual awareness, he basically determined that these things were true. Moreover, Yang Chen was not afraid that the content inside was fake. With Yang Chen's ability, he would definitely be able to find the problem after careful analysis. Once Yang Chen revealed that the Taishaman had used fake items to trade with Yang Chen, then the Taishaman's reputation would suffer another blow, and the losses would outweigh the gains. Yang Chen did not neglect and directly greeted the master of the palace. After talking to his 2 wives, he plunged into the alchemy room and began to refine the medicinal pills. The spirit-congealing pill is not difficult for Yang Chen. Even if she was distracted for a few times, it was enough for her to divide another thought to absorb and integrate the 4th-grade fire seed. After so many years of absorption, all the 3rd-grade fire seeds on Yang Chen's body have been integrated into the yin-yang heaven-burning fire, and several 4th-grade fire seeds have also been integrated, and the power is steadily improving. However, for Yang Chen, the 5th-grade fire seed was basically laying the foundation and gradually perfecting the embryonic form of the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. Only when he began to absorb the 5th-grade fire seed was it the real time to shine. The current yin-yang heaven-burning fire can already simulate any kind of fire seed below the 4th grade. Except for the power of ordinary fire seeds that could not be compared at all, no one can see any flaws. Up to now, everyone, including the people around Yangchun, basically thought that Yangchun's fire seed was the earth core fire. As a fire cultivator, for a long time, Yangchun has not used his own flame to fight against the enemy. This time, after refining the spirit congealing pill for the Taishaman, when he arrived at the demon continent, Yangchun would make a profit anyway. This time, it took Yangchun 3 years to complete a total of 5,000 spirit congealing pills. When he received the spirit congealing pills for inspection, even Mao Qi was stunned for a moment. 5,000 spirit congealing pills, all of them were 2nd grade spirit congealing pills. At this time, even Mao Qi couldn't help but feel a little emotional. Yangchun's move could be said to be very kind. It must be known that what the Taishaman asked for was the 1st grade spirit congealing pill. This time and the last time, they basically gave the 2nd grade medicinal pill, and the quality was absolutely impeccable. Yangchun had been refining for 3 years, and Mao Qi waited in Chunyang Palace for 3 years. It was conceivable that the importance of the spirit congealing pill was attached. But with this batch of medicinal pills, even if Mao Qi wanted to nitpick, he couldn't pick out a little bit. This old man has to say that although your price is high, the medicinal pills you give are excellent. Mao Qi couldn't help but sigh, which was a compliment to Yangchun. Then he didn't say anything more and left directly. After greeting the head of the palace, he quickly rushed back to Taishaman. During the refining of the medicinal pills, Yangchun also contacted Li Heng several times with his spiritual awareness. Each time, it was some small instructions, and it did not cause too much change. Basically, there were no more mundane things to do in the short term. After Yangchun finally talked with the head of the palace in detail, he took Gao Yu and Gong Sunling on the road to the demon continent. Before going, he must go to the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud Sect to pick up Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. There was no doubt about this. However, after the head of the palace and a group of high-level officials knew Yangchun's destination, they were somewhat reluctant to let him take the risk. Everyone had heard of the demon continent, but no one had been there. They only knew that it was a place where cultivators of various races gathered and killing was rampant, but no one knew what the specific situation was. Nevertheless, the dangers were clear. Although the territories of the monster race and demon sects were dangerous, compared with the demon continent, those two places were simply a peaceful paradise. Fortunately, Hoyin was not there. He was presiding over the banyan tree Immortal's Cave in the 10,000 Trees Forest. Otherwise, when he heard the news, he would definitely follow Yangchun. That place full of killing was Hoyun's favorite environment. In his previous life, Yangchun had never been to the demon continent. Across the vast sea of millions of miles, even the shuttle had to fly on the sea for almost 10 years. In addition, there were all kinds of fierce sea beasts in the sea. Ordinary masters couldn't even make a trip there. This was by no means a trivial matter. At that time, Yangchun took Luo Yuan, who was in the Deshang stage, and plunged into the territory of Lanning, who was about to ascend. If it weren't for the Sea Jasper Cup, he would have been directly obliterated. There was no other possibility. Luo Yuan, who was in the Deshang stage, was like this. It could be imagined that crossing the entire sea was almost like walking through the Hall of Hell. Even the two major sects were quite critical of Yangchun's decision to take their talented disciples to such a dangerous place to gain experience. But now Yangchun was the husband of the two women. No matter how big the sect was, it seemed that they couldn't manage the family affairs of the Yang family. In the end, they could only arm the two women in their respective sect before they were allowed to travel. After picking up the two women from their respective sect, Yangchun's family finally embarked on the journey to the demon continent. Chapter 990. Their destination is the demon continent. When Yangchun's family of 5 set off, many people knew their destination, and many people asked in surprise. Yangchun's destination was not concealed. Since he was going to the demon continent, a place where there was constant killing, He was naturally not afraid of adding some open spears and hidden arrows. The name of the demon continent was not a strange place among the major Tao sect. On the contrary, several major sects had disciples go there almost every once in a while. However, the masters of the major sect who went to the demon continent would never be talented disciples like the Cold Plum Fairy and the Dancing Snow Fairy, but a group of disciples whose qualifications were not outstanding and who did not have much hope in the sect. Some had violated the sect rules or other circumstances. Anyway, they were basically disciples who had no chance in the sect. If these disciples stayed in the sect all the time, they were doomed to tragedy. But going to the demon continent was different. As long as they could survive the ubiquitous fighting, they could basically become a master. In this case, whether they returned to the sect or ventured alone, their future prospects would be very different. The small sect also had a similar situation, but unless they couldn't mix in the Tao sects, who would be willing to risk their lives to go to the demon continent? Even Yang Chun had never been there in his previous life. First, he didn't have the ability, and second, he didn't have a determination to stay alive to avenge his master. Generally speaking, few disciples of the Tao sects could come back alive, and occasionally a few would come back, but it was also rare. In short, there were many people who had heard of it, but few people who had been there. Young master, this is a great opportunity. He heard that Yang Chun went to the demon continent, and before that, Hall Master Mao Chi had already got enough spirit-congealing pills. Yang Lan lost the opportunity to mention it in front of Li Liang. The last time he was locked in the deep cold pool for several years, Yang Lan's body was greatly damaged, and it took him many years to recover. However, while he was recuperating, he hated Yang Chun to the bone. He was constantly thinking about taking revenge on Yang Chun. If I kill him, wouldn't there be no one to refine the spirit-congealing pill in the future? Li Liheng did not alienate Yang Lan for Yang Lan's sake, but he was not a brainless person. For Yang Lan's provocation, he directly rejected it. Young master, I'm not going to kill him. Yang Lan leaned over to Li Liheng's ear and whispered, elder who is a dignified elder of the Deshang stage. Will he really do that kind of thing for a few pill recipes? What do you mean? Li Liheng thought about it a little bit. Could it be that Yang Lan was still thinking about something on Yang Chun? Young lord, look, the spirit-congealing pills you ate at the beginning are all spirit-congealing pills, but the quality is higher, right? Yang Lan saw that Li Liheng began to be interested and immediately persuaded. But what I got later were all second-grade spirit-congealing pills. So what? Li Liheng was stunned, and he felt that this was a bit incredible, but he still asked. Yang Chan will be so kind that he won't refine the simple first-grade spirit-congealing pills, and he will deliver them after the second-grade refining? Yang Lan reminded him quietly. You mean? Li Liheng suddenly thought of a possibility, and then became excited. He has a magic weapon that can improve the quality of medicinal pills. I'm afraid it's more than that. Yang Lan smiled in his heart, and said with a relaxed tone, when he was in the Yang family village, he didn't know a word. When he came to the Chunyang Palace, it was said that there was no one to guide him, but he could rely on his own cultivation to achieve the Yuanying stage, and also became a fifth-grade alchemist master. Young master, if there is nothing strange in this disciple will never believe it. Yang Lan has been targeting Yang Chun for many years, and naturally he has collected a lot of information about Yang Chun. Similarly, because of the importance of the fifth-grade alchemist master, Taishaman also found a lot of information, but in the Yang family village, they did not know, only Yang Lan knew. He was illiterate in the Yang family village? Li Liheng suddenly grasped the news and asked in a deep voice. This disciple guarantees with his life. Yang Lan saw that Li Liheng was hooked and hurriedly struck while the iron was hot. While showing his loyalty, he made Li Liheng more interested. Let's go and see the sect master right away. This time, Li Liheng learned to be good. Instead of acting on his own like the last time, he quickly got up and took Yang Lan straight to the courtyard of Sect Master Li. Soon, the two appeared in front of Sect Master Li. After a while, the Sect Master began to convene several core elders to discuss matters. Is there really such a thing? The elders who heard the news suddenly asked with a heavy face, and everyone couldn't believe the news they heard. An illiterate person could do this when he joined the Chunyang Palace and was suppressed by Chu Hong. It would be strange if there were no problems inside. Not to mention, he couldn't even read the secret books. How could he cultivate? Not to mention knowing the ancient characters and helping Taishaman interpret the ancient keys. The problem of literacy was easy to solve, but to understand ancient characters, that was a fantasy story. The vastness of the mortal world was almost unimaginable. Don't even think about it. Even the ancient characters of Taishaman would be lost. The disciples of Chunyang Palace, who were a month away from Taishaman, could read the ancient characters of Taishaman in just 100 years. It was simply a joke. Could it be that he got the inheritance of a predecessor? An elder immediately thought of this possibility. I'm afraid it's more than that. The deputy sect master shook his head and said, "It's useless to get the inheritance and be illiterate, unless he gets all the memories. Otherwise, it's impossible." Memories? That's impossible, someone immediately exclaimed. Not because of anything else, but because of other people's memories. Even the great elders of the Peak to Shang stage could not easily get them. No one in this world has ever cultivated in such a way. A group of core elders argued endlessly, all aiming at this possible way. But the conclusion of everyone's argument was the same, that no one could get all the memories of others, even half of them. Otherwise, it would not be so troublesome for the consciousness clone to descend to the lower realm. As long as they find a way to get the memory of the clone, they don't have to wait for him to slowly recall. There's one way, maybe it is possible. Sect Masterly pondered for a long time, and when everyone was almost finished, he opened his mouth and attracted everyone's attention. If there is a master who uses the method of possession to forcibly place his primordial spirit in a magic weapon that nourishes the primordial spirit, it is also a very possible method. Sect Masterly finally said his guess. Chapter 991. Boom! Listening to Sect Master Lee's judgment, everyone suddenly burst into discussion. It had to be said that Sect Master Lee's guess was really reasonable. The method of depriving others of their memory was not feasible, but this method was absolutely possible. The more they discussed, the more excited everyone became, especially after a few refining masters analyzed the possibility of this method. It was even more fascinating. If the Sect Master's guess was correct, then the reason why Yang Chun was so outstanding might be because of such a magic weapon. In terms of cultivation, it was definitely an ancient senior master. Otherwise, it was impossible for a guy with mediocre aptitude to have such a cultivation speed. As for alchemy, it was even more so. Could a master of the Jedon stage casually become a 5th grade alchemist master? If there was no one who didn't know how strong the guy was behind it, it was simply impossible. Being able to recognize the ancient characters showed that the primordial spirit in this magic weapon was already a master of tens of thousands of years ago. For such a long time, the primordial spirit stayed in the magic weapon that could nourish the spiritual awareness, and the strength of the spiritual awareness was simply certain. If that was the case, then it was only natural for him to be multitasking. In this way, whether it was the spirit congealing pill or the questioning inner heart pill, they were all based on the primordial spirit of this magic weapon. This also explained why Hu Qianyi, as a master of the Deshang stage, would bully Yang Chun. Hu Qianyi did conceal the news from the Taishaman. Now that he was imprisoned in Chunyang Palace, it was impossible to ask him for confirmation. However, this guess has been recognized by everyone as the answer closest to the truth. Otherwise, all the magical things that happened to Yang Chun could not be explained. Before, everyone had been wondering how Yang Chun became a 5th grade alchemist master, and now there was almost a perfect explanation. And just at this time, Yang Chun actually took his 4 wives to the Demon Continent. As long as they left the territory of the Dao sects, they would not be able to call for help. With such a good opportunity, did they still need to hesitate? It's a matter of great importance. Let Great Elder Lu take 10 late Yuanying stage masters to catch up with Yang Chen's family and bring the things back. Of course, Sect Master Li was not a good person. He immediately made a decision and directly sent a Great Elder to find trouble with Yang Chun. Just when a certain core elder promised to leave to make arrangements, Sect Masterly suddenly paused and said, Yangchen's wife named Gao Yu. Don't kill her. Bring her back to me. She has a fire attribute spirit root and cultivates a water attribute cultivation method. I suspect that she has some secrets. Maybe she's a good furnace for me. Yes, Sect Master. The elder paused and immediately agreed. Senior Lu Fengzi had pointed out that the Sect Master's cultivation base was stuck, and he needed a cauldron with full value of water attribute spiritual root to break through. Now it seemed that the Sect Master was moved by Gao Yu. This was not a big deal. The Sect Master of the greatest heaven sect needed a cauldron. Wasn't a matter of a word. How many people wanted to be the Sect Master's cauldron, but they still couldn't do it, not to mention that she was Yang Chen's woman. How could the elders fight against the Sect Master on this matter? This matter was discovered by Yang Lan. It is a great achievement. The Sect Master's reward and punishment were clear. For Yang Lan's role here, it was also affirmed the sect's secret pavilion allows him to go in and choose a magic weapon as a reward. When the Sect Master spoke, Yang Lan was excited almost instantly. After suffering in Taishaman for so many days, he finally had the chance to make a name for himself. Yang Lan had secretly vowed in his heart that as long as he got the magic weapon of his secret pavilion, he would practice diligently, and one day he would trample on Yang Chun. Of course, the premise was that Yang Chun could still live until then. Yang Chun did not know that because of Yang Lan, the Sect Master of Taishaman still coveted Gao Yu in this life and wanted to capture her as his furnace. He was currently crossing the sea with the 4 women. Everyone has their own way to reach the demon continent, and Yang Chun is the only one who uses a high-speed magic weapon to rush across a large area of the sea. There is no one else but Yang Chun. As soon as the 4 women entered the ocean, they found that Yang Chen's whole momentum had changed, and there was a faint killing intent that was difficult to detect. If it weren't for living with Yang Chen for a period of time, the women might not have been able to discover this. This time we're going to the demon continent. We're going to gain experience. After setting off at sea, Yang Chen warned the 4 women very seriously. To be honest, I have never been there. I don't know what it is like over there, but one thing must be remembered. What? Sun Qingxue asked quickly. Whether we meet at sea or on the continent, we will not show any mercy to you and me. The only thing we have to do is to pick up any weapon we can use and kill each other. Otherwise, we can only be killed by the other party. In the past, all you and my sect, reputation, what alchemist, what genius disciple are nothing in the demon continent. In the face of the beautiful faces of his 4 lovely wives, Yang Chun said very solemnly, no enemy will care about this, and no one will show mercy to the fairer sex. Who will our enemy be? Shi Shanshan was more concerned about this question. No matter how fierce the enemy was, as long as they knew who the enemy was, they could always be prepared. In theory, the enemy should be the demonized monsters and cultivators on the demon continent. After thinking about it, Yang Chun said the answer he knew. In fact, Sun Qingxue still asked in a low voice, anyone other than us? Yang Chun looked at the faces of the other 3 women and knew that they had thought about a lot of things, so Yang Chun only explained to the slightly simpler Sun Qingxue. What if it is our blue cloud sex people? Sun Qingxue seemed to be unable to accept such a thorough concept of friend and foe. She lowered her head slightly and asked in a low voice. Knowing that Sun Qingxue was coming to the demon continent to gain experience, Elder Hua explained some common sense of the demon continent to Sun Qingxue. In fact, only Gao Yu and Gong Sunling didn't know much. Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue were instilled a lot. Elder Hua cherished his disciples and even used his identity as an elder of the sect to get the contact information of some disciples of the Blue Cloud sect who were gaining experience in the demon continent, and told Sun Qingxue that once there was trouble, go to the disciples of the sect. In any case, those disciples who have been able to take root in the demon continent are always better than those who have just arrived. With these people taking care of her, I believe there will be nothing serious. On the demon continent, even the people of our own sect have to be on guard. Faced with Sun Qingxue's question, Yang Chen spat out this helpless answer. Chapter 992. Next, Yang Chun used his actions to show the four lovely wives what was called cold-blooded and ruthless. On the vast sea, the sea monsters encountered all the way without asking the right and wrong. They would attack when they met. If he could kill them quickly, Yang Chun never held back. He would directly attack and kill them quickly. At first glance, there was a gap in the realm, and the battle needed to be in a stalemate for a long time. Yang Chun always ran at high speed and never stopped for a moment. This situation was fine once or twice, but after several times in a row, the women seemed to be a little puzzled. Why run? Sun Qingxue was puzzled by this. It was clear that they could win. As long as they persisted for a period of time, maybe the five of them could kill the other party together, but they had to run away, which seemed very shameful. Two purposes. Yang Chun stretched out two fingers without hesitation and said very clearly, "First, we are in a hurry now, and we can't waste too much time on the road. The same is true on the path of cultivation. You should know what your main goal is now. You can't forget your original purpose because you're disturbed by some troubles. In addition, the same is true for cultivation skills. It is better to be proficient in one skill than to be proficient in one skill. I believe you know it better than me." Listening to Yang Chen's words, the women were taken aback. Although it was said that it would not delay the journey, the latter words were the key point. The four women couldn't help but begin to think about what was the main goal of their cultivation now. Was it just to gain experience? Or were there other more important things? It was better to be proficient in one skill than to be proficient in one skill. This was very much in line with the taste of the women. When everyone was cultivating, the elders of the sect told them that they must specialize in one skill, either alchemy or refining. None of the four women deviated from this. In addition to cultivation, Gao Yu specialized in refining. And Gong Sunling even cultivated the formation, which was even purer than Gao Yu. As for Shi Shan, there was nothing else but the flying sword. Needless to say, Sun Qingxue was willing to abolish her own cultivation base at the beginning because of her own cultivation mistakes. The persistence in her heart was by no means comparable to ordinary people. Second, it is also to demonstrate to you the easiest way to survive after arriving at the demon continent. Yang Chun waited for the girls to think about it. Then he put down two fingers and said with a smile, "If the attack doesn't hit, immediately escape. This is the safest way." The demon continent was extraordinary. If one was not careful, the price of life would be the price. To a large extent, the Dao sect's fighting style was incompatible with this place. If they could not find an effective way to gain a foothold in the early stages, then the four women would be in danger. Even if Yang Chun had great abilities, it was impossible for him to pay attention to the four women all the time. Therefore, it was absolutely better to let the four women master their own survival methods than to protect him. Teaching a man to fish was better than teaching him to fish. This was the correct logic. Then if it's an opponent that we could defeat, as long as it takes a little longer, can it? Sun Qingxue's words actually represented the thoughts of the four women, but she was the only one who asked. No, Yang Chun categorically denied Sun Qingxue's words, and at the same time denied the thoughts of his four wives. Why? With the support of the other three sisters, Sun Qingxue was not afraid to look at her husband, putting on an unconvinced posture, waiting for Yang Chun to explain. Gao Yu Gong Sunling and Shi Shan stood behind Sun Qingxue in cooperation, and four pairs of beautiful eyes looked at Yang Chun. I know that you are all genius disciples who have reached the Yuanying stage at a young age in the sect. Facing a guy who can't even be considered a strong enemy, it will make you lose face if you don't fight. When Yang Chun saw that all his wives were standing opposite him, he couldn't help but smile bitterly, and then began to explain. It's normal to fight and win in the face of the enemy, right? The four women nodded in unison, and the neat movements of the four beautiful faces in front of Yang Chun were simply the most pleasing painting. But Yang Chun didn't have any appreciation at the moment. He had to persuade the four women to prepare for the cruelest battle. If you really think so and plan to do so, you may not even survive a month in the demon continent. Yang Chun was very rude to the women, and he didn't leave any face. Even if your cultivation base is twice as strong as it is now, the result will be the same. Yang Chen's performance was so serious that the four women couldn't help but be cautious. As the husband of the four women, Yang Chen would never harm them. In this case, then Yang Chen had enough reasons to say so. The fighting style of the Dao sects was very similar to the confrontation between the two armies. Even if it was to eliminate demons and defend the Dao, they had to yell from a distance first and tell the other party that they would die before they would make a move. There was nothing wrong with this method. As a famous sect, of course, they couldn't teach and punish. They always had to kill the other party if they wanted to die, or they would make an appointment early and issue a life and death challenge. Yang Chen had experienced this method several times. However, if they always insisted on this method and didn't know how to be flexible, then it was still a small matter to encounter the monster race and demon sect disciples. The other party's general sneak attack could also be traced, and they could always guard against it if they were cautious. The problem was that there were not only monster race and demon sect disciples on the demon continent. In fact, all the cultivators could be regarded as one group. Everyone's common enemy was the demons who had been demonized by the demonic energy. Any cultivator, whether it was a Taoist cultivator, monster cultivator, or an ordinary monster beast, once they were accidentally invaded by the demonic energy and couldn't resist the invasion of the demonic energy, they would be demonized by the demonic energy and become a demonic creature without any normal thinking. When they saw a living creature with spiritual power, they would instinctively absorb the other's spiritual power to strengthen themselves. There were only two consequences of being absorbed by a demonic creature, either death or becoming a new demonic creature. In fact, the war in the immortal world that started thousands of years later in Yang Chen's previous life was to deal with more powerful demons. It was just that Yang Chen didn't know if these demonic creatures were related to the demons. After some powerful demonic creatures died, the demonic energy of their whole body would condense into a demonic bead. After the demonic bead was processed to remove the demonic energy in it, it was the best medicine for cultivators to promote their cultivation, even better than medicinal materials such as thousand-year-old ginseng. It must be known that before the demonic creatures were demonized, they had good strength. The demonic bead was almost another way of condensing the essence of life and cultivation, which was of great benefit to cultivators. The stronger the demonic creature, the higher the level of the condensed demonic bead, and the better the effect. Of course, it was best to be able to kill in one blow. But once caught in a bitter battle, it would definitely be a disaster for cultivators. Chapter 993. The way the demonic creatures fought was completely different from the thinking of normal people. Generally, the demonic creatures always appeared in groups. If you're surrounded by several demonic creatures, and you don't have the means to kill the other party quickly or escape, in addition to being attacked by the demonic creatures, you also have to resist the invasion of the demonic energy. No matter how high your cultivation base is, you will die with hatred. Therefore, this method advocated by Yang Chen was definitely the most suitable way after arriving at the demon continent. It was not only useful for establishing a foothold in the early stage, but even for the veterans who have survived here for a long time, it was also applicable. Of course, after getting used to it, everyone would naturally develop their own way of doing things. Each method is extremely suitable for fighting and survival, and there will never be another direction. This is not the same as what our sect knows. Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan obviously had more doubts. What Yang Chen said was completely different from what some people in the sect who had been to the demon continent and returned alive said. Which one should they listen to? The demonic energy is constantly spreading, but it is temporarily restricted to the demon continent. There is no particularly good way to suppress it now. Yang Chen explained very seriously. In order not to cause unnecessary panic, the entire demon continent is sealed by a formation, and there are only a few entrances. And everyone who enters the demon continent will be forced to make a great heart oath that they must not disclose the true situation on the demon continent to outsiders in any way. For this reason, the masters who arranged the sealing formation at the beginning have unified a set of lies, so that the masters who return from the demon continent can cope with the questioning of others. Yang Chen explained quickly, Generally, the masters who go back alive will have a good future and will never use their own lives to fulfill a sect in this matter. These things were learned by Yang Chun from a dying master in the spiritual world. The master had experienced the experience of the demon continent. He had always been tight-lipped until he met a great enemy in the spiritual world and was dying. Only then did he say this to Yang Chun. Yang Chun only knew a little about it and didn't even know what the demonic chi was, so he only had this concept, but the real situation of the demon continent was still very vague. It could almost be said that he didn't understand the real demon continent at all. Listening to Yang Chun's words, the four women were a little stunned. What kind of person could set up a formation that could seal a continent in such a big way without letting the leaders of Haotian Taoism, including the Taishamen, know about it? Could it be another unknown force? In this regard, Yang Chun was not very clear. He could only know everything after going to the demon continent in person. However, some survival methods had to be instilled in the four girls in advance, so that they would not suffer when the time came. When you enter the demon continent, you will face cruel killing. After Yang Chun waited for everyone to digest it, he continued, "The demons are everyone's common enemy, but our enemies are not only demons, but also countless cultivators who will do anything to snatch the devilish bead. Each devilish bead is equivalent to a few years or even decades of hard work. No one will not be tempted." The reason why the masters who can go back alive have a good future is because of the existence of the devilish bead. No matter how poor a person's aptitude is, when he uses this kind of cultivation that is almost equivalent to the accumulation of time, he can always become a master of a generation. Coupled with a strong combat awareness, he will become a peerless master 100%. Devilish bead is such a heaven-defying thing. How can no one know about it? Shan Shan was very concerned about improving her cultivation and immediately asked the key point, if we can find a lot of devilish beads, can our cultivation be greatly improved? In theory, yes. Yang Chun directly gave an affirmative answer. However, I don't recommend you do this. In addition, there are not many opportunities to get the devilish bead. Not every demon will condense the devilish bead after death. Only demons that are strong to a certain extent will have the devilish bead after death, and they can't fight too much before they die. Yang Chun is not clear for the time being about what kind of cultivation base a demon needs to condense the devilish bead, but he also knows that the chance to get the devilish bead is probably 1 in 10,000, which is very difficult. As for why Yang Chun doesn't recommend the girls to take the devilish bead, there is another reason. For cultivators whose cultivation aptitude is not very outstanding, using these external objects to improve their cultivation base is a faster way than their own cultivation. But for talented disciples like Shan Shan and Sun Qingxue, this is not a good idea. No matter how good the external power is, it is always better than the power of their own cultivation. Shan Shan and Sun Qingxue have made a big name for themselves in their previous life, and they have suppressed countless masters who have experienced the experience of the demon continent, relying on this. For Yang Chun's current 4 wives, they came here to gain experience. That is, they really came here to gain experience. As for other gains, they don't have to worry too much about it for the time being. This is also what Yang Chun said at the beginning, to understand what their main purpose is to give up the trivial things they should give up. The 4 women finally understood Yang Chun's good intentions and began to treat it carefully. The experience along the way was also completely in accordance with the method taught by Yang Chun. 1 strike, and then leave, never stop. Most importantly, they should be able to quickly judge the strength of the opponent in this blow, and then make further choices. This was the real point. While practicing this fighting style, the 4 girls consciously fought on their own. Everyone knew in their hearts that the 5 people could not be together forever, and it was not a good thing for anyone to always live under the protection of Yang Chun's wings. At this point, the 4 women understood, and Yang Chun himself also understood. And although the women were very harmonious when they were together, there was not necessarily no competition in their hearts. At least Yang Chun knew that Sun Qingxue and Shan Shan were united against Gao Yugong Sunling, and there would also be some friendly competition between Sun Qingxue and Shan Shan and between Gaoyugong and Sunling. No one was convinced to be overwhelmed by others, so naturally they worked hard and competed in secret. There were a lot of joint attack practice on weekdays, but the frequency of each person going out alone was not low. No one wanted to see others better than themselves. They were cultivation geniuses themselves. After being pointed out by Yang Chun, although the cultivation of the four women did not directly improve, their combat effectiveness rose sharply. He believed that those guys who could compete with the women before they set off would definitely die very ugly against the four women at this moment. In the training of the women, the demon continent finally appeared in front of everyone. Chapter 994. From the Tao sects of the Central Plains to the demon continent. It had been 13 years of drifting on the sea, and everyone finally saw the shadow of the demon continent in front of them. Even without judgment, everyone knew that this must be the demon continent. Before they got close, they could detect the restriction of the formation. 100 miles away, they heard the warning sound. 100 miles ahead, the demon continent, 9 out of 10, turned back quickly. A majestic but not annoying voice very seriously repeated the above 4 sentences, as if to warn the approaching people. Where's this place? Finally arriving at the destination, all the women were looking forward to it. They didn't know what the demon continent was like and what kind of challenges they would encounter. During these 13 years, the women honed themselves all the way at sea. They encountered countless sea beasts of the Yuanying and Dashang stage, and even once they almost bumped into the territory of a sea beast that was crossing its tribulation. If Yang Chun hadn't discovered it early and used the overturning sea jasper lamp to shield his spiritual awareness and speed up, he might have been led into the range of the tribulation and was attacked by the tribulation. There were battles almost every day, and they had to escape every day. Even most of the time, Yang Chun would drive the shuttle a little further away to observe, until the women or one of the wives ended the battle or escaped the attack range of the sea beast. Then he would take them into the shuttle. When they arrived here, the women's combat experience was already extremely rich. In other words, their experience in protecting themselves was also extremely rich. It was better to practice in advance at sea than to practice after facing the demonic creatures. When they were almost 10 miles away from the coast, there was a voice telling everyone which direction to go to avoid being attacked by the formation. Yang Chun didn't show off. He honestly followed the instructions of the voice and circled along the coastline for almost thousands of miles before he came to a portal that could enter the demon continent. It was really a huge portal, and he didn't know who made it. The huge stone with a height of several tens of feet was carved with dragons and phoenixes, which was extremely exquisite. When everyone appeared, put away the shuttle, and entered the portal, they were like 5 small ants under the huge arched portal. Everyone's spiritual awareness couldn't explore the door at all, and they couldn't even see the scene inside the door. All the way along the coastline for thousands of miles, it was the same situation. At sea, they didn't know what the situation was like on the demon continent. As soon as they entered the huge arched door, Yang Chun was slightly stunned. Inside the arched door was a huge square that could accommodate tens of thousands of people. On the other side of the plaza was a slightly smaller door. But at this moment, the door was tightly shut, and no one knew when it would open again. At this moment, there were over 100 cultivators scattered around the huge square. There were humans and demons, and each of them had formed a few small groups that were scattered in various directions. When they saw someone enter, they all looked up. Before the 4 women entered the door, they had already covered their faces with veils, but their graceful and perfect figures still attracted many covetous gazes. This veil was refined by Yang Chun when the women were practicing on the sea. While covering their faces, it did not affect their vision at all. It was very suitable for the 4 women to use. The people sitting in the square didn't talk much. They were scattered in groups, and everyone's eyes seemed to be on guard. Their spiritual awareness could already be used, but no one would easily explore it. With so many people gathered here, it was no less than provocation to easily use their spiritual awareness to explore. Everyone was sitting and waiting in the square, and Yang Chun was of course no exception. He directly found a direction with fewer people, walked to the edge with the four women, and then occupied this corner and sat down. Almost everyone in the square looked straight at Yang Chen's group of 5 walking over there. Some guys looked at the four women's attractive figures and seemed to have begun to drool. However, no one spoke, no one moved, everyone just watched. It was a young man who had been sitting in a corner. When he saw Yang Chun and his party, his eyes lit up. When Yang Chun and others sat down, he stood up and walked towards Yang Chen's side. One person's action immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone's eyes followed the young man's action all the way until he stopped 2 feet away from Yang Chen's family. The entrance and exit door opens once a month, and this place will open in 3 days. Before opening the door, no one is allowed to fight here. The young man was very handsome, and he didn't look tough at all. He was also at the early nascent soul stage, and he didn't seem to be a threat at all. "Thank you for telling me." Yang Chun thanked the other party. "I'm Yang Chun Rishing. I don't know your name." Being in the demon continent, Yang Chun also had an extra eye and didn't tell the other party's true identity. "I'm Li Chung." The young man also returned the salute, but his eyes turned to the four women. "These are few of my friends." Yang Chun casually introduced to Li Chung. "Han Mei Luyun Shui Wu Bai Xia. We plan to come here together this time to gain experience." Yang Chun used a fake name himself, and naturally would not tell the other party the true fate of the four women. The demon continent was insidious and treacherous, and it was necessary to guard against others. "Good aptitude." Li Chung cupped his hands at the women, whispered a word, and then turned to leave. But before leaving, he whispered to the crowd, "Maybe we will meet again in the future." Watching Li Chung return to his original corner, Yang Chun discovered that Li Chung was alone. It was very rare to see a person come to the demon continent to gain experience, but Yang Chun soon found that he was a little strange. Among the hundreds of people around them, at least 3 of them were sitting alone. Those 3 guys seemed to be at the middle and late nascent soul stage, and at a glance, one could see their toughness. Even if he didn't know them, he knew that they must have been honed in some difficult places. Although there was no murderous aura released from their bodies, the fierce smell could be found no matter how far away. Among the more than 100 people in the square, there were only a few Jidan stage masters, and the rest were nascent soul stage masters, but it seemed that so many people added up were not as fierce as these 3 guys. Most people's eyes were always focused on the 3 masters, intentionally or unintentionally. In this regard, the 3 people were simply dismissive, sitting on their own as if they were not affected at all. After some observation, even the eyes of the 4 women began to sweep over the 3 people, but Yang Chen's attention was always on Li Chung, who had just come to speak. Chapter 995. Li Cheng's performance didn't seem to be anything special. Strictly speaking, he was just a little enthusiastic and came over to tell Yang Chen the day to open the door. Judging from the realm that he revealed, Li Chung was just in the early yuanying stage, and he was not a threat to most people here. And looking at the kind of tender and enthusiastic appearance that he showed, it was easy to be ignored by everyone. Gao Yugong Sunling, Shi Shanshan, and Sun Qingxue were carefully observing everyone in the square. Although these people may be in the same camp after they go in, no one can guarantee that there will be no other thoughts inside. The 4 women were very defensive in their hearts. Soon, the 4 women found that Yang Chun seemed to be paying attention to Li Chung intentionally or unintentionally, and they were all puzzled about it. They wanted to ask, but this was not the place, so they could only hold their doubts in their hearts. Li Chung didn't give people an outstanding feeling, but Yang Chun always felt a little strange, but for a while, he couldn't find out what was strange. Many cultivators who came here to gain experience may have been misled by people, thinking that this was a place for killing each other. Before coming to this square, they had been listening to the guidance of the mysterious voice. In the square, everyone was waiting for the door to open, and it was still safe for the time being. However, as the time to open the door approached, some people began to have some unnecessary thoughts. There was still an hour before the door would open, and the people in the square were no longer sitting honestly and began to walk around. "Kid, come here alone. Be careful not to lose your life." Join us, and we will guarantee your safety. How about it? You few little Jidan stage also dare to come to the demon continent. If you want to live, be my slaves, this old man can take care of you. First of all, the few people who were alone and the few Jidan stage cultivators were threatened by the gangs of several people around them. Of course, the three who seemed fierce did not dare to do so. They just targeted Li Cheng and a few small groups of 1 or 2 people. When Yang Chun thought he would stay out of it for the time being, someone put his mind on him. To be exact, it was on the women around him. Right now, 10 people were walking toward Yang Chun. All of them were nascent soul cultivators, both men and women. The core was a very handsome man who looked very dashing. There were also 4 women beside the man. However, it was obvious that they were either his concubines or servants. They seemed to be very attached to the man. One of them even stayed in the man's arms. The remaining 5 looked very fierce. They were either the man's bodyguards or servants. Facing Yang Chun was a brawny man with his arms crossed in front of his chest. My young master has taken a liking to your friends and wants to invite them to train together. When the burly man spoke, his face was almost raised to the sky. He only used his chin to look at people with disdain. Lu San, be polite. Don't scare the ladies. The young master's voice came from behind the strong man, and he instructed him casually. A strong man in the nascent soul stage was called such a vulgar name as Lu San. He only had a surname and no given name, which was replaced by a number. Obviously, he was a servant. Yes, young master. The strong man hurriedly bowed and answered. Then he leaned forward and whispered viciously in a voice that only Yang Chen could hear. Kid, if you know what's good for you, you'd better be honest. Otherwise, I'll let you die an ugly death. Go away. Yang Chen's eyes squinted at the strong man and shouted. The strong man was stunned, and then a cruel light appeared in his eyes. A ferocious smile also appeared on his face. Good kid, you have guts. My young master likes people like you the most. He especially likes to torture you in front of the women he likes. If you don't want to die now, get out of here. Yang Chun snorted coldly again. This time, the strong man smiled ferociously again and stepped aside. Immediately, the young master walked over with the woman in his arms. Take off your veils. Let me see what kind of beautiful faces you have. The arrogant voice of the young master sounded, but this time he was facing the 4 women directly and did not pay attention to Yang Chen at all. The 4 women did not raise their heads and ignored the young master, who came out of nowhere. There was no other way. The territory of the mortal world was too big, and the Tao sect only occupied a small piece of territory. Countless cultivators were distributed in the vast territory, so it was normal to not know where they came from. Good cauldron. The young master did not care. He just looked at the 4 women unscrupulously as if he was admiring goods and praised them. The woman in his arms was a little unwilling, but the young master did not care. He just tightened his arms, and his face changed slightly. The woman in his arms did not dare to say anything more and could only lean her head on the young master's arms with grievance. She had long been used to the young master's problem of being fickle. It was nothing more than fighting for favor. The 4 cold women, even if they were favored for a while, they could not compete with her. The 4 women still ignored him, but the young master smiled indifferently. He had seen many women like this. At first, they ignored him, but when they really knew how good he was, they could no longer let go. The 4 women around him were proof. Lu San. The young master looked at the 4 women and shouted at the strong man just now. Lu San is here, young master. Lu San immediately replied loudly. Kill him as soon as he enters the door. The young master dropped a sentence, then walked to the door with the woman in his arms. Lu San responded in a low voice, then shook his head left and right, and 2 strong men about the same size as Lu San stood on the left and right sides of Yang Chun, looking at Yang Chun as if looking at a dead man. The people in the square had already discussed almost at this moment, and those who should make a decision had already made a decision. They were clearly divided into several groups, a few fewer than at the beginning. The portal to enter the demon continent was finally opened in the expectation of everyone. Then, several groups that were close to it walked in first. Then it was the guys who were alone. Later, the young master and his concubines and servants also walked into the portal with a laugh. On the square, after a while, only Yang Chen's family of 5 was left. At this time, they slowly got up and walked toward the door. "Are you ready?" At the side of the door, Yang Chen asked the 4 women. "Yes." The 4 women nodded and replied in unison. "Let's go." Yang Chen laughed and took the lead in stepping into the portal. The 4 women followed closely and all entered the demon continent. Boy dot. Lu San's familiar voice sounded directly in everyone's ears. Chapter 996. Several rays of light rushed straight to Yang Chen. They did not give Yang Chen any time to prepare at all. They intended to take Yang Chen's life as soon as they came up. It seemed that the people around the young master were swift and decisive guys. They didn't talk nonsense and directly killed him, neat and tidy. Yang Chen stood in the same place as if he was scared silly, motionless. Seeing that the 3 sword lights were about to fall on Yang Chen's body, suddenly there were 3 rays of light beside Yang Chen, blocking the flying sword. It was Gao Yu, Sun Qingxue, and Shi Shanshan at the same time, each blocking a sword. Immediately afterward, 3 beautiful figures rushed out and fought with Lu San and the others who rushed up. Gong Sunling quickly stood in front of Yang Chen, as if she was Yang Chen's personal bodyguard. She looked around like a tiger, not daring to relax at all. The young master, who was waiting to watch the show not far away, directly turned into a sluggish state at this moment. What is this situation? A man hiding behind a few women? It turned out that these women were not Yang Chen's concubines, but bodyguards. Thinking about the women around him, all of them were cultivation furnaces, and their cultivation was a little lower than his. Asking them to be bodyguards was simply courting death. Compared with the women around Yang Chen, it seemed that the people around him were a lot worse. After killing this annoying kid, Yang Chen, this time, he must subdue these women who seemed to have good qualifications. They could be cauldrons and bodyguards. Just thinking about it made him feel cool. Be careful, don't hurt these girls. The young master suddenly thought of a problem and quickly reminded loudly. If Lu San and the others were to disregard everything and hurt these girls, it would really be a pity. When he thought of the beautiful figures of the 4 women, the young master was more and more looking forward to their beautiful faces under the veil. In any case, he couldn't let Lu San and the others destroy this wonderful feeling. What responded to him was not the familiar voice of Lu San shouting, "Yes, young master," but a bloody head flying straight to him. Just immersed in the wonderful fantasy, the young master did not pay attention to the battle. He was very confident in the ability of Lu San and the others. You must know that these guys had killed more than one master of the late Yuanying stage in his territory. Yang Chen and the others were all in the early Yuanying stage, so it was not a problem at all. However, the bloody heads destroyed all of his beautiful fantasies. Decapitating a few delicate girls while they were still alive was not a good thing. It was too much of a spoiler. The young master was about to sweep the head away with a flick of his sleeve so that he wouldn't see what he shouldn't see, but suddenly his eyes widened and he looked at the flying head incredulously. The head of a beautiful woman couldn't be so ugly. On the head that kept rolling, the 2 big eyes that died with injustice, coupled with the shocked expression on the face, perfectly stopped the expression of the owner of the head at the moment of death, at the moment of decapitation. Those eyes were so familiar. Their owner had been by his side for no less than 100 years. At this time, the young master reacted. The head turned out to be the head of Lu San that he had just ordered. The woman in his arms also saw the head clearly and screamed in horror. They were all promoted to the Yuanying stage by the young master with a secret method and various medicinal pills. Where did they have any combat experience? They used to watch the young master's people kill people, but now their own people were killed. It was the first time. Looking at the familiar person's head, several women screamed in horror. With the blood drops that kept falling in the air, it was as if a scene of a horror film was playing. With the screams of a few women, another head flew up. They were both thrown in the same direction. They were both drenched in blood, and they both died with grievances. "Leave one for me." Gong Sun Ling made a sweet voice on the other side, and through the veil of the face, it reached the ears of all the people present. Of the 3 slaves who started, only one was left who had been seriously injured by Sun Qingxue and was about to be beheaded. His opponent, Sun Qingxue, was just about to make a move. When she heard the cry of Gong Sunling, she flew up and kicked the unlucky guy to the front of Gong Sunling. Gong Sunling was not polite and quickly received the seriously injured guy into the mountain river geographical map. This neat action, anyone could imagine the kind of smiling expression under the veil of Gong Sunling. A Yuanying stage master suddenly disappeared without a trace, and suddenly everyone was shocked. The remaining 2 servants of the young master hurriedly blocked in front of the young master, shielding the young master and his woman behind them, and looked at Yang Chun and his party in horror. "How can you be killed so quickly? It's a pity." Gong Sunling's voice sounded again. It was very beautiful. Just listening to her voice, one could imagine how beautiful the face behind the veil was. But on this occasion, Gong Sunling's natural voice made people involuntarily feel creepy. A group of onlookers looked at Gong Sunling as if they were looking at a man-eating demon. Being decapitated and dying without a whole body, it was already a terrible way to die, but in front of this girl with a beautiful voice and a good figure, it seemed that even this couldn't be done. In an instant, he disappeared without a trace. It was not like he disappeared out of thin air, but he was received into a space magic weapon. The delicate little girl was not afraid of what kind of damage a master in the late Yuanying stage would cause to her space magic weapon. This could only explain one thing. That was, she completely ate that guy. Taking people away would never make them eat and drink well. Everyone knew this. So, what would happen to the poor guy? They could guess 1 or 2 things. Even killing people was a pity. The future of the guy who was alive might not be as good as dead. Many people were waiting here with the idea of watching a show. The scene in the square just now was not something that no one had seen. People had the habit of watching a good show, especially watching this kind of show. They could roughly estimate the strength of the 2 sides. For the guys who may become their future opponents, everyone wanted to pay attention to them. However, half of the people felt a chill in their hearts when they saw this. The 3 women who rushed out of Yang Chen's side. Their moves were simply more ruthless than the other. Almost in the blink of an eye, the outcome was already clear. The first was Shi Shanshan, followed by Gao Yu. After the other party only made a sword move, she used a strange movement and sword technique to behead them mercilessly. His moves were steady, accurate, and ruthless, causing people to be shocked. Chapter 997. After 13 years of practicing with those ferocious sea beasts on the sea, the 4 women's current fighting style was almost instinctive. If they didn't move, once they moved, it would be fatal and merciless. If it weren't for Gong Sunling's timely shout, wanting the mountain river geographical map to accept 1 more Yuanying stage master, the last guy would definitely be beheaded by Sun Qingxue. From this battle, it could basically be seen what the cultivation of the 3 women were. Shi Shanshan had no distractions. Her combat effectiveness was the most powerful, and she was the first to kill her opponent. After Gao Yu successfully refined the dragon horn flying sword, coupled with the simultaneous cultivation of water and fire, she was almost at the same time as Shi Shanshan. There was only a line of difference. Only Sun Qingxue was not ruthless enough. Although she hit her opponent hard, she had not perfectly achieved a one-hit kill. Of course, this was related to the cultivation base and the opponent. After a few confrontations, the 3 powerful slaves that the young master had relied on became 2 corpses, and 1 was missing. It was clear that the losers were 3 in the late Yuanying stage, and the 3 women who won were only in the early Yuanying stage. This result shocked everyone who saw this scene. The young master was already a little panicked. He couldn't have imagined that the women he wanted to take over as furnaces were so powerful. If he had known this, he wouldn't have provoked them. Now, his 3 most powerful subordinates have been lost. How could the remaining 2 be the opponents of the 3 women? The 4 women were just the playthings of the young master. Participating in the battle was not enough to send food. Only the young master himself had some combat effectiveness. But there was also Gong Sunling and Yang Chun who did not fight from the beginning. At this time, even a fool could see that Gong Sunling was definitely a master of the same level as Shi Shanshan, Gao Yu, and Sun Qingxue. Which force came out of these four female masters? How could they be so terrifying? Gao Yu, Shi Shanshan, and Sun Qingxue. None of the three women took back the flying sword and slowly walked towards the young master from three directions. Gong Sunling didn't want to be left behind, so she stepped forward to face him. Although the four women's faces were covered by veils, the killing intent in their eyes was as obvious as a torch in the dark night. I think we might have had a misunderstanding. The young master stammered as he spoke. He was no longer as arrogant as before. Instead, he was more pleading. I'm the young master of the trapped Dragon Valley. I have offended you before. I hope that seniors will be magnanimous and let me off this time. In order to survive, the young master of the trapped Dragon Valley didn't even care about his face. He was a late nascent soul stage expert, and he directly called a few early nascent soul stage cultivators seniors. It was simply the biggest joke in the world. Be it in terms of age or cultivation, he should be the senior of Yangchun and the others, but now it was the other way around. However, no one around them laughed out loud when they heard this. When faced with the terror of life and death, it was understandable to lose one's composure. However, no one felt any sympathy for the young master. What was the purpose of coming to the demon continent? In order to carry out killing experience, like the young master, who came with his concubines and servants, clearly regarded the demon continent as a good place to play. Relying on the power of his family, he didn't take a cruel place like the demon continent seriously. He deserved to die. This kind of person will die here, sooner or later. It was only the difference between early and late death. Early death and early reincarnation. Now he was killed by Yangchun and the others, so as not to cause trouble for others in the future. There was not only a similar battle. From the beginning of entering the door, there have been several waves of people fighting separately, but Yangchun's side was the first wave to determine the outcome so quickly. This is the demon continent. Yangchun had been standing there without making a move, but at this moment, he opened his mouth and said, this sentence had already announced the death penalty of these people. To gain experience in the demon continent, one must be prepared to die at any time. Since they are here, those who are not prepared will only die. The difference is that Yangchun and the others will make a move, or the demonic creatures will make a move, or others will make a move. That's all. The result will not be any different. The four women well showed the results of training on the sea, swarmed up, and faced with the already frightened opponents. They were merciless. Even if the other party already knew the power of the four women and was strictly on guard, they only persisted a few more than the previous three people. The young master and the two servants, without any accident, fell under the swords of the women, leaving the four beautiful concubines shivering on the side. Seeing the cold eyes of the four women looking at them, the four women knelt directly on the ground in fear and kept pleading. Gong Sunling stepped forward directly, and with a wave of her hand, the four women who did not dare to resist were received into the Mountain River geographical map. Although these four women's combat effectiveness was poor, and it could even be said that they had no combat effectiveness at all, they were also Yuanying stage cultivators. As long as they breathed and refined their qi in the Mountain River geographical map, they could increase the power of the Mountain River geographical map. Although this method was cruel, it was better than killing them. It was better to live than to die, wasn't it? 10 people, 10 Yuanying stage cultivators. In the blink of an eye, there were only 5 corpses with their heads separated, and the other 5 disappeared without a trace. This scene made the people around feel a little scared. Yangchen's group of 5, no one dared to despise them because of their early Yuanying stage cultivation base, but many people cast a frightened look. They believed that after this episode, at least these people who had just come in, no one would dare to easily hit them. Li Cheng, who had been staying here to watch the excitement, came forward at this moment, gave Yang Chan a thumbs up, smiled, and praised. Brother Yang is really amazing. The people were killed by the 4 women, but Li Cheng gave Yang Chan a thumbs up, which made people feel very comfortable. However, Yang Chun did not underestimate this Li Cheng in the slightest. In his eyes, No matter how powerful those fierce guys were, he could always see through the strength of the other party. But this Li Cheng was a bit unpredictable. On the surface, he only had the strength of the early Yuanying stage. But when Yang Chun faced Li Cheng, he always had a feeling of fear, as if he was instinctively afraid of something. This was a feeling that Yang Chun had never felt before. Even when he faced the sect master of the Xiantian sect in his previous life, the other party could turn Yang Chun into ashes with a wave of his hand. Yang Chun did not have such fear. However, Yang Chun could not find any abnormalities with Li Cheng. This fear of the unknown was the most frightening thing. Fortunately, now Li Cheng seemed to have no malice to Yang Chun. He just said hello and left quickly. Yang Chun couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. His eyes turned to the world behind the door, and for the first time began to seriously look at the legendary Demon Continent.